The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. Welcome to the program. We're going to be with you live for the next 3 hours. I'm getting settled in, right? 3 hours. It's a long time, but it goes by really fast because we're going to be talking about how we can be the most effective, efficient members of a child's team who is someone diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder. And I know that that's important to you. If you're tuning into us, whether you're a parent, teacher, practitioner, I know that it's important to you. I'm a former teacher and I'm a parent of a wonderful young man who is now 9 years old. Can't even believe I can say that. He was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He started ABA therapy at the age of 3. And we talk a lot about ABA, applied behavior analysis, here because it is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. And by the way, it is effective for all of our kids, wherever they are. It's going to help them to get progress because our goal should always be to help them to reach their fullest potential. Is that going to be different for every single child on the spectrum? You betcha, because they're all different. This is not a one-size-fits-all diagnosis, and it is not a one-size-fits-all kind of situation where we can just throw the same thing at all the kids and have the exact same outcome. So we have to let go of that idea to begin with. But what we don't want to let go of, and which I think a lot of people over the years have let go of after a period of grief, is that, well, there's nothing you can do. That is not the case at all. Nothing could be further than the truth. We know, and science has shown us very clearly, that if we start as soon as possible, right? And when I say that, I know that there are some of you who are out there. We were talking about this yesterday. We were fortunate enough yesterday during the 11 o'clock hour during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, which is every Wednesday at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I always co-host that hour with the fabulous Nancy Alspaugh Jackson. And yesterday our special guest was Holly Robinson Peete. And during one of the breaks, the three of us were talking, and I think it was Nancy who said, you know, the thing about it is that I always worry because I think that sometimes there are parents out there who hear what we have to say about how much can be done and they feel guilty, like they missed the boat. And we all sat here and said, yes, and nobody ever wants to make anyone feel that way. You have not missed a boat. The boat is still here. But instead of thinking, oh, I could have gotten on the boat last week, and we all go there, right? That's more time wasted. That's 10 more minutes that you could have been on the loading dock, right? And loading up the luggage to get on the boat. So I want to let you know, please, I believe me, I get it. My son was diagnosed at 2.5, and I really believe he could have been diagnosed at 2. When I walk down that scary hallway, it makes me crazy. I try not to go there, or at least try not to go there by myself. Take somebody with me who goes, Shannon, time to get out of here, right? But I understand it. We all have that place. And then when my son was 2.5 and diagnosed, it took me another 6 months before I got it together and got on a waiting list and got through the waiting list so that he started therapy. Yeah, it's the stuff of nightmares, right? And I know that there are some of you who are watching going, oh, I only wish that my child had started ABA at 3. It's all relative, and it's all crazy making. It is not going to help our kids today. There's time for that later on. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure. But there isn't time for it right now except for a millisecond. Acknowledge it. Go, yep, I'm not the only person who feels that way. But start. Start, because we know that as soon as you start, you're going to start to see some benefits. And it's not easy to start ABA. I know somebody wrote in yesterday and said, you know, during the Holly Robinson Hour, and said, you know, not all of us can afford ABA. And I know that that was true a couple of years ago, but it isn't true anymore. And I'm not just talking out my you-know-what. There is more autism insurance refunds, so more people are able to afford the whole Megillah, having, you know, therapists come to their door from a provider than ever before. And we're going to talk more about that today. But not only that, because there are some of you who say, yeah, that's great, I still don't have insurance reform, or I live in a country that's not even possible, and there's still no ABA provider where I am. You know, the nearest house is 1,000 miles away, Shannon, so I got no ABA here. But I want to let you know that's not the case. That there, you know, CARD e-learning, wonderful program that you can learn how to be an ABA technician, somebody who is delivering the ABA yourself. It's estimated to be a 40-hour class. I don't think it takes everybody 40 hours, and I think that some people like to spend a little more time than 40 hours on it, but very economical, and guess what? There's grants for it too. So even if you can't, it's very low cost comparatively, right? But if you still can't afford that, please don't feel bad, but please apply for a grant for it. There are grants given for CARD e-learning from Autism Care and Treatment Today, and they're in a grant phase right now. If you fill out that grant today, because the grant phase is only for another, it's till the end of the month. And so what is today? The 26th, only for another 4 days. And it may take you 4 days to fill out the paperwork, but you can learn how to do ABA, and you don't have to go take a college class and drive someplace else. You can do this online in your own time, start, stop, and you can use the skills curriculum hand in hand with it. I'm using skills at home. I got to tell you guys, in so many ways, it's so wonderful, and we're going to have somebody in talking about it later on. But what I want you to know is that it makes it possible no matter where you are. You don't have to be a victim and say, well, you know, they talk about this ABA thing, but I can't get it. That is not the truth. And again, there are grants available for CARD e-learning and skills through Autism Care and Treatment Today, www.act-today.org. Go there today. But we are going to talk about ABA here, and hopefully we're going to help to show you how it is used, give you some tools to use, some things to do with your children at home so you can begin to see, hey, this works, I can do this, and this will make a difference in my life and in my child's life. And at the end of the day, I want my child to reach their fullest potential. It's okay to say you don't know what that is right now, because guess what? That's the truth. None of us know, right? None of us know. But we have to give our kids the benefit of the doubt and give ourselves the benefit of the doubt that we can do that. I've been talking all week long about the fact that there were days, you guys, when my child was diagnosed, when I looked at the sheer wall of stuff that I needed to do and said, I don't know if I'm up to this. I really don't. But, you know, and I forgive myself for not knowing, right? But you start to walk. And that's all you can do. I always talk about, you know, you stand at the foot of a mountain and you look up at the top and it seems impossible. Seems absolutely impossible. And you can stand there forever and look up to the top of the mountain and go, man, that is a long ways away. But anybody who climbs mountains will tell you, you get started. And once you're on the mountain trail, you can't see the top anymore. You know it's there. You know it hasn't gone away, but you're looking at the things that are happening where you are on the mountain, and you got to focus on that. But if you keep moving, you know, Dory and Finding Nemo, just keep swimming. So we just keep walking up that mountain, and eventually you get to a point you go, look at how far off the ground we are. How did that happen? Because you kept moving. That's what we got to do. That's what all of us have to do. We got to hold hands and keep moving, right? That's what I got to do. And I'm here, and you guys can remind me that I got to keep moving, and I'm here to remind you that you have to keep moving, and hopefully The information that we provide you here will help to save you some steps so that you don't get off on the wrong path, don't get stuck someplace that isn't productive. That's really what I want to do for you. I am not an expert in autism. I am not an expert in ABA. I am not an expert in parenting. I've said before that I like to think on occasion that I'm an expert in my child. It's complete and total poppycock. As my child will tell you on a regular basis, I am just a student here. That's all I am. But I'm an excited student, and I want to learn with you. And on your behalf, I have been granted access to a world of people that I would not have had access to on my own, because I'm pushy. And I like to talk, and I don't believe in the word no. I just don't. So I have been granted access on your behalf to ask people questions. I don't always know what you need to know, though. So I ask you to participate in the conversation. Tell us what you want to know. Tell us what you need to know. Tell us where you are today, what kinds of subjects you want covered. So if we're covering something that is of no use to you on a regular basis, then let me know, because the one thing I don't do is read minds, unfortunately. Wouldn't that be lovely to read minds? If the first person's mind I would read would be my son's, right? In any case, there are so many ways that you can participate with us. If you're watching us right now on autism-live.com, then you see before you that it either says either live or rebroadcast. If it says live, then there's a box that says your questions, and you can type in there at will. You don't have to log on. You don't have to register. There's no credit card. It's all free. Isn't that lovely? And shocking, right? It's not your typical thing. That's okay. We're not your typical people, are we? We don't have your typical kids. We're not interested in typical. We're interested in information and progress. So, and that's really what we want. So type in your questions into the question box. I'll be happy to take those on and find an expert to answer or tell you what I know about it until we get an expert in here. And far-reaching, the experts, we will hunt them down for you. Now, if you're watching right now and it says rebroadcast, or you're watching us in any of the other ways you can watch the show, and there are many that we'll talk about in a second, there are still ways you can get a hold of us. Emily's going to show those to you now. There's the email address, and we love your emails. We absolutely do. It's such a wonderful thing. We will answer your question on the next available show. If it's about an expert that was here, we will, for instance, we'll forward emails to Holly, Robbins, and Pete and say, hey, you know, this is what somebody asked. So we'll be happy to get back to you with a link to what we find out, or an actual email. Sometimes it takes a while. We're trying to get some interns here because the workload has increased, and that's great. And we want to encourage you guys to keep writing, but we're trying to get some help here to be able to get answers back to you in a faster, more efficient way. But it's not the only way you can get a hold of us, right? You can call us. You can pick up the good old-fashioned phone, and you know they call it the horn. Get us on the horn. You can do that. In fact, you can be patched directly into the studio. A little later on today, we're going to have Dr. Adel Najdowski in, and if you want to talk to her directly, call during the live show. We'll patch you in here, and you can be asking Dr. Najdowski questions that you want to know. You can also Skype in with us, which is a wonderful thing. If you have a camera on your computer and you like the way your hair looks today, we'll be happy to put the picture up and do sound and picture. If you don't like the way your hair looks, or you don't have a camera on your computer, on my laptop at home, no camera on the computer. This is how ancient my system is. But we can put you audio only, and we're happy to do that as well. So wherever you are in the world, feel free to Skype in with us. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. You can also participate with us on Facebook. We really love that. More and more of you are going to our Autism Live page and liking us. We find that very reinforcing, and so we appreciate it when you do that. While you're there, answer the question of the day, and you might meet somebody there that you can have conversations with. I always say that we need as much support as we can. Get yourself a local support group and a global support group. That local support group is going to help you with things that only people in your area are going to know, and the more global one is going to help you to deal with the more global issues that have to do with autism. And you might find somebody our children are all different, right? And I know I'm always looking for a parent whose child is about my age, who has the same kinds of ecological system, right? Because the wealth of information that you guys can share and say, oh, my child's having this issue right now, and they say, mine too, and you go, okay, it's not just me. I don't know, there's something so healing about that. So talk to each other on our Facebook page. We love it when you do that. And by the way, we also appreciate your tweets. A lot of you were tweeting yesterday about Holly Robbins and Pete. Keep on tweeting. Keep on keeping on, right? So all those ways that you can get a hold of us, you can be answering the question of the day or telling us what you want to see here, or if we've helped you in some way, let us know if you have time. If you don't, I get it, right? But if there's something that's working, let us know, because then we'll keep doing that, because I know that there are others who could use that as well. All right. I mentioned that there were lots of ways for you to watch us. You can be watching us on blip.tv. This is a wonderful way that you can watch back episodes. If you didn't get to see Holly Robbins and Pete yesterday, the whole episode is on Blip, and the whole episode is also on YouTube. A little later on today, we'll have the shorter segments of when she was on and different things that happened yesterday, but it's available to you right now on Blip TV. You can pause it, rewind, fast forward. You want to know what Holly Robinson said about Joe Scarborough? Yeah, it's pretty great. So I love her. She's so eloquent, and she's much nicer than I am. She's just a nicer person than I am. I have no problems admitting that. I'm a hothead, and she's much more level-headed, although she did say that the first letter that she wrote to 50 Cent, her husband had said, take it down a notch. I love that, because that's what happens in my household. I go, yeah, and my husband goes, all right, but what I'm really hearing is this. And maybe, then there are other times that I go, is this too much? And he says, no, go for it. Love that. In any case, you can be watching us on Blip TV. You can also watch us on YouTube. We have our very own YouTube channel, and there's all kinds of wonderful information there. All the interviews that we've done with experts, you can go in and search topics and get the information that you need. Again, it's free. It's there for you. Everybody here understands how important knowledge is, and that you should have free access to content. And I got to tell you, when my child was diagnosed, and I used to think, well, isn't there anybody that knows what to do about this? And then when I found out they did, I was thinking to myself, well, why aren't you telling everybody? And and now I see that they're very much trying to. They're trying to get the information to you, and it's there on YouTube. It is also on iTunes. We are a totally free download on iTunes. There is no cost to you whatsoever. You can download picture and sound and watch it whenever you want. I know you got to get to OT, and you got to get to speech, and you got to drive here, and you got to drive there, and you got to fill out this paperwork, and you got to fill out that paperwork, and you don't have a whole lot of time, and it's not at the same time every day. Check us out on iTunes, because you can download it, have it for when you are ready, pause it, rewind, whatever, what have you. And by the way, we are also on Ustream. So all of those different ways, again, for free. Gotta love that, right? Okay. And as I mentioned, I just want to remind everybody, I am not an expert, but we will have experts in from time to time, and when we do, I hope you participate and ask them the questions that are burning in your mind. All right, we start every morning with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we take on one word, one phrase, one anagram, and try to figure out what the hey nani nani these experts are talking about. So important that we make friends with the jargon. I know I didn't want to. I was a holdout. There were moms around me. After a while, I got into sort of a coffee clatch of moms in my area whose kids were the same age as mine. And there were discussions that were had. Oddly enough, when my son went to preschool, he was in a completely included class. When we started out the year, he was the only child in the class. I think there were 26 6 kids, I want to say, in his preschool class, and he was the only child on the spectrum. But there were 2 boys in the class who had older siblings that were on the spectrum. So then there was a circle of 3 moms. And then about halfway through the year, they added another child to the classroom who was on the spectrum. So now there were 4 moms, and right close to the end of the year, they added another child to the classroom. In part because the other 2 children, my son and the other child, were doing so well so that the classroom could handle a total of 3. But in any case, you know, my circle started to grow. And I have no idea why I was going to bring that up. None whatsoever. A total loss of thought. It happens sometimes. Oh, I know exactly what, because we're talking about the jargon. And they were all so much better at the jargon than I was. They, you know, especially the 2, well, no, I won't say that's true. All the first 3 moms were so much better. I will say that the other 2 had had a little bit more time than I had had. But they were better at the jargon and they were learning it faster than I was. And I was the holdout. I was the person who was like, I'm going to make them speak in a way that we can all understand. I'm going to make them do that. And that didn't work out. It really didn't work out. It took so much time and there was so much frustration for me. And eventually I came to see, look, this is going to be here for a while. This is not something that's a weekend vacation, this autism thing. We're going to be in autism land for quite a while, if not forever. So I need to know what I'm talking about. I need to know what they're talking about. This involves my child. You know, if something were wrong with my child and he had some sort of rare bone disease, I wouldn't be thrilled about it, but you betcha I would become really versed in what the terms are that surround bone disease. I would get really good at knowing it so that when the doctor said it, I would understand and wouldn't have to say, what are you talking about? And when I said, what are you talking about? And he said this, this, and this, and I still didn't understand it, to say to him or her, okay, explain to me more, over and over and over again. And I decided to make friends with the jargon. I'm still making friends with it, folks. There are still things that people say. In here, you see that an expert says something and I go, all right, you lost me. I have no idea. But when we do make friends with the jargon, a little bit at a time, we see that we become more efficient, more effective members of the team, and that's really what's important. Okay. So our phrase for today is extinction burst. Oh my, this is, as they say in the Charles Dickens novel, the best of times and the worst of times, right? Because, and I'll show you why. Okay, so our actual definition for extinction burst is an increase in the frequency of responding when an extinction procedure is initially implemented. Well, aren't we glad we cleared that up, right? Okay, if that means nothing to you, welcome to the club. It means nothing to most of us. All right, that's why we always have a working definition. Okay, extinction burst, a temporary spike or increase in problem behavior that occurs when the behavior source of reinforcement is initially removed or discontinued, i.e. the behavior gets worse before it gets better. Okay, so let's imagine that the child is tantruming on a regular basis. I know. We don't have to go far to imagine that, right? The child's tantruming. So we have somebody do an FBA, a functional behavior assessment, to figure out why. Because guess what? There is a why. I know that was shocking to me too. I thought, well, my child has autism. He is just going to tantrum on a regular basis. That would be wrong, right? We were on a game show. Incorrect answer. Tantruming does not have to go hand in hand with autism, but it does a lot of the time because the child doesn't have another way of communicating, and so they're going to tantrum. For them, at their stage of the development, they think that it's the efficient way to get what they want. And it's not that far of a leap, because if you stop and think about it, baby comes out, mommy holds the baby, baby cries, baby gets a bottle. Baby cries, baby gets a diaper change. Baby cries, baby gets held. Baby gets bounced. right? Baby gets attention. Cry, something changes. Cry, something changes. And then suddenly, when they're around 2, we have this expectation of, could you stop crying to get something? Why? Why do we have that expectation? Because the expectation is they are going to begin to start using language, and not only that, that they're going to begin to understand what we're saying, and they're going to begin to miraculously understand that there's a better, more efficient way to get what you want. Okay, well, for a lot of kids, that happens to some extent in those terrible 2 years. But for our kids, and a lot of kids who aren't on the spectrum too, by the way, that transition is not smooth. It takes them a while, or they don't make the transition, and we have to help them make the transition. But we understand, well, you know, if you cried and you got something, you cried and you got something, you cried and you got something, and now we're going, why are you crying? Thinking you're going to get something, right? Not crazy. So there is a reason why our kids are tantruming, but we want it to stop, right? We want to stop before we are pulling our hair out of our head. Now I've made my hair worse. I know, which is a stretch. But in any case, we want for the tantrums to stop. So we figure out what is the function of this particular tantrum, and there's lots of different things it could be, right? And a child can be having a tantrum at 11 o'clock in the morning that has one function, and one at 2 o'clock that has a different function. And we never want to assume, always best to work with someone to identify what the function of a behavior is. But let's imagine for a moment that we have had a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, come in, look at the situation from a 360-degree perspective, and they say to us, you know what? The function of this particular tantrum that's happening on a regular basis is attention. The child wants some attention. And when they tantrum, you're giving it to him. That does not make you a bad person, but, you know, the child flings themselves on the floor and you go, stop that, get up. Why are you behaving that way? Get in the corner. I'm not dealing with, it's all attention. All of that is attention. So you've been feeding the tantrum. I know, and we all do that, right? You go, oh, really? I didn't mean to make the tantrum be fed, but we do. And we all do. Forgive yourself. You're just a person. You've got laundry to do. You've got things to do, shopping, bills to pay, papers to file, doctors to see, OT to go to. But you want the tantrum to stop. So you know, okay, the BCBA has said this tantrum is attention driven, which means we are going to starve it of attention. We are going to stop responding the way we have in the past. Now, let me just say one little asterisk here thing. You might think to yourself, oh, well, great, I'm going to try this later on today because my child's been having a tantrum, but you don't know if the function of this tantrum is attention. And if you starve attention to a tantrum that is not attention driven, you run the risk of doing something not good for your child and making the tantrum even worse. So don't play with that. Have somebody tell you. But in the circumstance that someone has told you it's attention driven and you decide to starve it from attention. Now, this does not mean that you leave the room and pay no attention and aren't concerned about whether your child is safe. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean you're not going to give your child attention. It means you're not going to give the behavior attention. No attention for the behavior. So you're still in the room. You never, ever want to leave the room. That is not how we take attention away and put attention-driven things on extinction. But we will do some planned ignoring, which means the child is there, they're freaking out, they might be pulling on your pant legs, screaming, crying. You move stuff out of the way so that they're flipping out, but they're not able to hurt themselves or you or any objects in the room, right? And you're not staring at them. You're in the room. You know, the big example that I always give when my child was throwing a tantrum, when I was taught how to do this, I started watering all the plants in the house and walking over to the sink, filling up the little, you know, pitcher and filling, and he was right there and pulling on my pants and screaming, Mom, right? And I, you know, could feel him, I could see him, but I wasn't going, what, honey, what's wrong? That would be giving the behavior attention. Okay, very important, because the child is going to try really hard to get your attention. Something is likely to happen when you start starving a function of a behavior. It's putting it on extinction, starving it from its food supply. That imagine for a moment the things that you do on a regular basis. That my perfect example, we have a light in the master bathroom that was not working for a long time. And now for a long time it was working. We'd go in, we'd flick the light switch, and the light would come on in the bathroom. And you stop thinking about that after a while because it just works, right? And then the light stopped working. And what did I do? I went in, I turned the light switch on, and I didn't get the reaction that I thought that I was going to get. And so do you know what I did? I went over and flicked the light switch like 5 times really fast. Why? Why do we do that? Because you go, well, it always worked before. Why isn't it working now? Well, it still didn't work. Now, did I do that once? No, I did that for a couple of different times over a couple of different days. I went in, turned on a light switch, nothing happens, and I go, what is wrong with the switch, right? I'm an adult. I have a master's degree. I know that if the light switch doesn't come on, flicking it on and off is not going to work. I still engaged in the behavior. That is an extinction burst. I am used to getting this response, and when it didn't work, I tried extra hard to see there was a spike in my behavior despite the fact it wasn't working. Our kids are very likely to do that as well. So when we put something on extinction, we say we're going to starve it. Our example, the behavior that's happening that's attention driven, and we say, I'm not going to give attention to the behavior. Much different than not giving attention to the child, right? And if there comes a time when the child calms down and says, Mom, it's like the lights come back on, and you go, yes, right? And they go, and start tantruming, you're back to watering the plants. Have you seen the videos on America's Funniest Home Videos? There's at least 2 of them that I'm aware of the child, neurotypical children, who are having tantrums that the mom is videotaping, and she stands there and videotapes, and the child's flinging themselves back on the floor. The mom walks just to the side of a pole in the house, and the child stops crying, and the child drags themselves over till they can see the camera and see the mom, and flings themselves on the floor again and cries. Why? Because it was attention driven. And you know that old thing about if a tree falls in the forest and nobody is there, does anybody hear it? Does it make a sound? Right? If it's attention-driven tantrum and nobody's giving it attention, how much gas can it have? Eventually, it's going to die down. But the thing you need to know is that frequently there's going to be an extinction burst. The child is going to have whatever the behavior is get worse for a period of time before it gets better. You can see it on a chart. I love when you have therapists, and we all should be charting too. It's the thing I'm the least good at, but I know it's important, that you say, okay, on this day, we started an extinction procedure, which meant we're going to starve whatever the function is, whether that's attention or something else. Sometimes our children tantrum to get something, right? A lollipop or whatever it is. And so we start saying, if the child flips out and we turn on the television, the child's going to continue to flip out so that the TV gets turned on, right? And when we make that decision, extinction, child flips out, there's going to be no TV. Well, there is a period of time when the child is going to flip out extra. Now, here's the problem. A lot of times in the moment, either because we can't handle it or it isn't the right moment, we will give in. Right? It's not just you. You are not a horrible parent. I have done it myself. Where you just give in and go, I can't deal. Fine. Turn on the TV. Okay, please try really hard not to do that. And I will tell you why. Because if you give in and give the thing that the child was doing the tantrum for during an extinction procedure, if you give in during that extinction burst, you know what's going to happen? The next time when you go to do it, it's going to take twice as long. Right? And it's miserable. Extinction bursts are just so very not fun. The thing that I finally, after I would start to be able to see this, we'd put something on extinction and we'd have a plan, right? And clear the decks a little bit because something's going to happen, right? And you got to be ready for it. And what I started after a while is that my inner monologue would become, this is the last time. This is the last time we're going to have a tantrum over this. I just have to be in this space, deal with it, and breathe, because this is the last time that we're going to have this tantrum. And then the rest of our lives, we're never going to have to do this again. And so while he'd be flipping out, I would just be sitting there like a Buddha, keeping my face neutral, saying, look at this tantrum. Look at this tantrum. It's the last time. I really should be videotaping this to commemorate that this is the last time we're having this tantrum. But I'll be honest with you, that's the only way I could get through it, because I wanted to throw up, cry, leave. Sometimes it was in public, embarrassed, humiliated, feel this tall as a parent. People are looking at you like, you should be stopping that. No. No, I am making it clear that they're behaving in this way, and I'm not giving anything for it, including attention. Because remember, even if we're at the child or yelling at them, it's attention. They don't care good attention, bad attention. When a child wants attention, they'll take whatever you have. Bring it on down. All right, so that is an extinction burst. So when I said to you, it's the best of times, it's the worst of times, because if you ride the extinction burst and do not give into it, it is going to stop. And then it's like that peace and quiet after a thunderstorm, and you can smell the ozone. Your life gets so much better, so much better. But it's hairy while it's happening. Extinction bursts, not fun. Make sure you've got support. Make sure you're ready before you put something on extinction. Okay, and work with a BCBA. All right, we always have a question of the day for you. And our question of the day today, oh my gosh, I saw this morning that this was the question of the day. And I went, oh, how did I know that I was going to need this question on this day? How do you recharge your batteries when you're exhausted? Oh my, I was so exhausted yesterday that I couldn't, there was a period of time when I could not lift my hand up. I was so tired. So what do you guys do to recharge your batteries? At one point I said to my husband yesterday, late afternoon, I said, we got to go to the park. We have got to go to the park. We're working on bicycling for my son. And I said, we have to load up the bike and go to the park. Normally we would just do it in our neighborhood. I said, no, we got to do the extra mile. And he said, but you're exhausted. And I said, yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing. I'm going to be exhausted no matter what. So if I have something to look forward to, something to do, something to feel like we're making progress, that's going to be the thing that's going to help me. And I just went to bed earlier. Am I still exhausted? Yes. Are you still exhausted? I know you are. So I'd love to hear from you about what recharges your battery. What does it for you? For me, sometimes it's pushing, to do something that's fun. I always talk about how it's important to have the manifesto, what's most important, because, man, it is easy in a given day to get off course, right? Where you go, well, I have to do this, right? And that's the stuff that takes the priority. But sometimes when you look at it compared to the manifesto, the thing that I have to do isn't even on the manifesto. And there were a lot of things that I needed to do yesterday, but on my manifesto, one of the things that is like right up at the tippy top is my relationship with my child and my husband. And all the things that I had to do yesterday were not on the list, amazingly enough. So we went and rode some bikes. Now, did that go smoothly? Not so much, and we'll talk about that later on today. But it all ended up for the best. But how do you guys recharge your batteries? Love to know. You can be letting us know on Facebook, on Twitter, all those different ways. Okay, our topic for the day and our topic for the week, it is a lovely one. And I'm not going to put this one on very long because I really think the universe makes me walk my talk. Problem solving. How do we solve problems? This morning I really felt like I had hit a wall with some stuff that was going on. And it's so easy to get into that place and be defeated and go, okay, I don't know. yeah, right? Because a lot of times things that we need to have done, we have to rely on other people. And how do we make other people do the things that we need for them to do? Well, this is a problem for everybody, not just for me, right? Problem solving. And we always have to find the solution. Step back, look at the problem and go, what's happening here? What do I actually have control over? What don't I have control over? What possibly can I change here? We all need to stay in that mindset as much as possible. I do, you do, we got to be there together. How do we solve the problems? Because you know that on this journey, it is not going to be roller coaster ride free. Right? But it can be exhilarating if we get into the mode of thinking, I can take this on. I will tell you quite honestly that it took me quite a while with autism, but I did. I got into a mode through a help of a whole lot of people where I got into a mode where I started saying, it doesn't matter what the challenges are, we're going to find a way. Was I that way every day? No, but I could get into a zone, right? Where it was like, what is it going to take? And people would start talking to me. I go, that's fine. I get it. There's issues. What is it going to take? What is it going to take? Just tell me what it's going to take and we'll figure out how to do that. I don't want to spend hours discussing all the reasons why we can't. Just tell me what's it going to take. That didn't always work, but sometimes it really, really did. And I have said to people many times in my life, if I could get into that zone in all the areas of my life, oh, look out. Right? What could I not accomplish? But I think it comes down to when something is really important to us, when it's really reinforcing to solve the problem. And for me, and I hope for you, this journey through autism and the rewards of being able to look at your child and say, we did everything we could. I left no stone unturned. We didn't take a no for an answer, and we kept on swimming. Oh, so worth it. Okay, so some of the different things that we're going to talk about, in just a few minutes, we're going to take on compliance. It's a topic that we need to talk about today. And later on today, we're going to talk about executive functions. And at 10:30 today, we are going to have Dr. Adel Najdowski in the house with us here today. We're talking about autism in the classroom and some things that we all need to be mindful of, whether you're a parent or a teacher, about how autism is a prevalence in the classroom and how we can be applying these ABA techniques in the classroom. And I'm going to have her introduce, we've talked about it a little bit before, but haven't actually gotten to see it here on the show. We're going to get to see it today. I'm going to keep muscling it until we can at least see it. Behavior Champ. I have seen it. I got to tell you guys, it's amazing. I was talking earlier about when you have an FBA done and you get the function of behavior, and what this does is doesn't give you the function of the behavior, but once you have the function of the behavior, it helps you to figure out the intervention that you want to do. And it's earth-shatteringly wonderful. Absolutely so cool. I want an app for it on my phone is what I want. So in any case, Dr. Adel Najdowski is going to be with us at 10:30 this morning talking about Behavior Champ and autism in the classroom. You're not going to want to miss it. We got to take a break because I've gone on way too long, and we'll be back with compliance after these messages. Currently in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some guesses?
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana. We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible. Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And it is time, and we're a little late, but it is time to talk about compliance. What is compliance and how do we get it? Compliance is when we ask our child to do something and they do it. But I want to put an extra spin on it. What would happen, I know, think about this for a second, try this on for size, if not only if we asked our child to do something and they did it, but they were happy to do it. How different would your life be? What would your life look like if that were the circumstance? Have we not all been someplace at a party or whatever and seen the mom who has the really compliant child? Now, I'm not talking about blind compliance where they're little automatons, right? Because I'm not interested in that. I'm sure you're not interested in that either. I know sometimes it sounds good, but it isn't. But you know what I mean. The mom who you're someplace, and whether it's a teenager or a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old, the mom says, you know, can you sit down and do this? And the child goes over and says, okay, mom. And you go, all right, really, seriously, what is in your food? What have you been doing? But we all can have that. Yes, I just said it and I meant it. We all can have that if we are willing to work for it, and that means that we have to let go of our old ideas. I know, we all have been drilled our entire lives and been drilled on television and everything that we watch that says, you know, if you ask somebody to do something and they don't do it, then you ask that much louder and get frustrated and let them know that you're frustrated, and eventually they will just do it. Except I'm going to ask you to think back in your recent memory and your long ago memory, when did that ever work? Okay. I'm giving you a second. It doesn't. It really doesn't. Now, we can bully someone into being compliant, but that only lasts for a millisecond, right? It doesn't even last a full second, a millisecond, and then they go back to doing what they wanted to do. And if we punish them for not doing what we wanted them to do, what happens when we're not in the room? Are they going to be compliant with our wishes when we're not in the room? No. They're just going to wait until we're gone. Now, I ask you, is that the kind of compliance that you want? Is that the kind of relationship that you want with your child? Probably not, right? Wouldn't we all like to think that the day is going to come when our child is a teenager about to be an adult, when we're going to leave the house and know that our child is going to behave in the way that will keep them safe and the way in which we've been fostering and teaching them for however many years? We'd all like to think that. Well, that day doesn't spring out of nowhere, right? It comes from thousands and thousands and thousands of times of a child being compliant and being rewarded for it. Great. Let's open our minds to that idea. If we are constantly rewarding a child for being compliant, what is the outcome going to be? We're going to have a child who enjoys being compliant and knows that it's worthwhile. Fabulous. I don't think that that's a far stretch for any of us to accept, right? The big question is, how do you get there? Because, you know, we all think, okay, well, I know how I would maintain compliance, right? But how do I get there? Well, first of all, I'm going to say to you that maintaining compliance is harder than you think, because it is something that needs to happen on a constant basis. So even if you do nothing else today, I want you to try to do an experiment in compliance. All right, you ready for this? What would happen if you tried to find as many times today to praise the people in your life? And I'm not just talking about your child on the autism spectrum. I'm talking about everyone. How many times could you do it? This is my challenge for you. How many times can you praise? Can you find an excuse to praise all of the people in your life and tell them what a great job they're doing? And what will your day look like if you have tried to do it as many times as possible? Now, there is an asterisk to the challenge that you can't take back your praise or qualify it or meter it in small amounts. So you can't say to somebody, wow, you did a really good job with that. That's amazing, because you never do that, right? Because that's not truly praising. That's a backhanded compliment. So how many times today can you say to someone, I know it's hard. It's really, really hard. How many times today can you compliment people and say you're doing a good job? I'll tell you a couple of things that are going to happen as a result of you doing that. You're going to feel better. You are going to have a happier day. You're going to feel better about yourself. You're not going to feel like everything is constantly circling the toilet, right? So it's going to improve your mood, and that has a payoff for you immediately. And your stress is going to lower, your blood pressure is going to lower, and you're going to start to see things in a different way. I love one of the exercises that they do sometimes is they say to people, I want you to look around the room right now, and I want you to notice everything that's blue. Take a minute, look around the room, see everything that's blue. And you look around and you see, okay, I see this blue, 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 all this blue. And then they ask you to close your eyes and picture all those blue things in the room. Now, tell me everything that was brown in the room. And you go, brown? I wasn't looking for the brown, I was looking for the blue. I can picture all the blue things, I can picture one or two brown things, but now open your eyes and look around the room and see all the brown things that are there. But when you were looking for the blue things, you didn't see them. And what happens when we start praising the people in our life for all the great things that they're doing, right? We start to notice how many great things they are doing. And it kind of shifts things, rearranges things a little bit. It really does. Don't take my word for it. It's your challenge for the day to try it out. But what will happen also, and you're going to notice it with at least somebody in your life, whether it's your child that's on the spectrum, your child that's not on the spectrum, your spouse, your mailman, whoever it is, you're going to notice with somebody that when you praise them, they shift as well, and they become more compliant. It's crazy. It works. That other thing that we do where we go, do this, do this, do this, and they don't do it, Doesn't work, but this, I gotta tell you, I challenge you, this works. Find a reason to praise everyone that you can, as much as you can today. Now, let's talk specifically about children. How do we get children to do the things that we want them to do? First of all, stop and ask yourself, what is it that I want them to do? Is it reasonable? Right? Is it something that reasonably the child can do? Because if you're asking somebody to do something unreasonable, you know what the result is going to be: frustration on everybody's part. So pare it down. You know, if I say, what is it that you want your child to comply with? And if it's a list of 22 things, I can't remember 22 things. And I'm just going to guess that a 5-year-old child, on the spectrum or not on the spectrum, is not going to be able to remember 22 things. We have this thing that we do in the car on the way to an event with my son, where we'll go over some basic rules. And it's always hilarious to me, because I'll say to him, all right, let's go over some basic rules for a birthday party. You know, what do we do? What don't we do? And I try to have at least, I always go for five things that we do. And maybe, you know, 2 of them are things we don't do, and 3 of them are things that we do, or, you know, mix it up however we want to do them. And then, so we'll decide together what the 5 things are. And then afterwards, I'll say to him, okay, so what are the 5 things? And guess what? 9 times out of 10, I can't remember. I can't remember what the 5 things were. So, and then I say to him, well, if mommy can't remember, then how are you supposed to remember? Let's pare it down. And we usually pare down to 3. It's okay for us to do 5, because sometimes in the moment, one of those 5 things that got bumped off the list comes up, and yet he remembers it in the moment. But it's okay to start with 5 and pare down to 3, because then it's really doable. And we don't want to have expectations of people being perfect, and we don't want to give them the expectation that we're not going to be happy with them unless they're perfect. So you might start, and if I say to you, what do you want your child to be compliant with? And you've got a list of 22 things. It's time to whittle. It's time to edit. What's most important today? Do you want your child to come when you call them? Do you want them to sit down when you ask them to? Do you want them to be quiet in appropriate circumstances? What do you want them to sit at the table and eat? Now you notice that all the things that I said were things that you want them to do. I'm sure that there are things that you want them not to do, but it's so much harder to not do something than it is to do something. So see if you can't language whatever that you don't want them to do into something that you do want them to do. So you want them to not be loud, or you want them to be quiet, which is this, you know, what does quiet look like, right? You say to me, be quiet. How quiet? It's relative, right? But if you say to me, can you whisper? Then I know you want me to whisper. Okay, I can whisper. I might need to be reminded in another couple of minutes but I can do it, and I can comply with it, and then I've given you a reason to praise me, right? So try to make it whatever it is that you want them to comply with, hone it down, make it an action that you know they can do. We never want to be in the business of asking somebody to do something that they don't understand and that they can't do. And that's another part of this. Receptive language. Where is the child in terms of receptive language? Because what do they understand? What don't they understand? It's not easy to know, right? But if you ask a child reasonably to do something that you know that they can do, and they're not doing it on a regular basis, it might be time to step back and reevaluate and say, what words am I using? Is it clear to the child? Because we can't assume that it is. Try different words. If you've been saying to the child, quiet down, quiet down, quiet down, and the child is not doing it, I think it's safe to assume that they either don't know what you're saying, or they aren't able to figure out, maybe they think that they've, taken it down a little bit and it's not enough for you. So you got to use different words. Can you whisper right now? And you model it for them and they whisper back. Wonderful. So that when you're in that doctor's office and the child is running around screaming, You know, that's an ideal time to say, can you whisper with me? Let's have a contest to see how long we can whisper. But you're constantly praising. So as soon as they start to whisper, you're saying, what a good whisperer you are. You are the most fabulous whisperer. I'll tell you what, if we can whisper for the next 4 minutes and you get out your watch and show them where 4 minutes are, because they may not understand receptively what 4 minutes, but you know, get out the watch. When this number looks like this, then if you were still whispering then you're going to get this and so or whatever, right? So letting them know that by complying with me, things get better. I don't know why I'm still whispering. But in any case, we want to set up circumstances that are clear and defined, and that as soon as they get it, when it's clear and defined, we praise, 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 reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. And I think what you'll see by the end of the day is that everybody is happier. You can't start compliance in the middle. You can't assume that the child already understands that it's rewarding to be compliant, because that's probably not been the case, right? I love Hank Moore, who works here and is a wonderful, wonderful expert in autism. Anytime somebody says something about a child not being compliant, he goes, oh, well, are they being praised enough? You know, I remember the first time I heard him say that, and they were talking about a different child, and I went, oh my goodness, I don't do that enough. And I still don't. This is a daily choice, you guys, a daily, daily choice. My son, the other day, we were coming back from the pool, and it was late at night, and we were talking about something, and we went to cross the street, and I'm always saying to him, you know, we get in the middle of the street, and I go, you know, you didn't even look. You know, you're counting on me to look, and if you're doing on that, and what happens if sometime mommy doesn't look? Nag, 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 right? And what happens if sometime I don't look? You're going to be squashed like a bug. My heart is going to break. Words, 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 nag, 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 right? And it's not helping, right? But we went to go into the street, and he was talking to me, and he's looking both ways. As he was talking to me, it's everything I've ever wanted from life. And I stopped in the middle of the street, and he said, what? And I said, I'm so proud of you. You're such a big boy now, and you just looked both ways, and you didn't count on me to do it. I'm just so proud of you. And he said, oh, Mom, you know, you don't say things like that enough. Ugh. Right? And it's a reminder to me. And, you know, and then for like the 3 days after that, we went to Las Vegas, and he was looking both ways and saying, Mom, you're not looking enough. Right? Now, I mentioned I have compliance in this moment, right? So you'd think that maintaining compliance would just be that easy. No, it is a daily thing we got to remember. If you got to put it up on your mirror in your bathroom, and put it on a kitchen cabinet, put it inside the refrigerator, praise, 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 praise. I love that song by Fatboy Slim. I have to praise him. I call it my song for Jem because I have to be reminded on a regular basis. I have to praise him like I should, with all the noises and the sounds. Right? I love that song because it reminds me I have to praise him. It isn't hard, but it's hard to remember. You want compliance? Heap on the praise. How much can you do it? Find an excuse to praise them. Ask them to do something you know they already want to do, and praise them for that. And guess what? The 10 minutes after that, you can be asking them to do other stuff, and eventually get to the point where you can ask them to do something that 10 minutes ago they just said no to. They'll do it now because they know it's worth it. You made it worth it. You made it reinforcing. Praise, praise, praise. Reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. Always. You don't get to a day where you go, well, thank goodness we got compliance. It doesn't happen. It does not happen. But if we can on a daily basis, praise, 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 we feel better, they feel better, and we get compliance. So that's our word on compliance today. Hey, it's time for the A word. This is that wonderful documentary being made here by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, who is now 3 years old in the series. And Jack Riley's had some issues with compliance come up from time to time. And again, it will come up. As the child grows, you get new compliance issues. And that doesn't stop. That's why some people get to teenage years and go, I don't know what just happened. Have I been hit by a bus here? I can't wait. I can wait. But in any case, different things. We're always working on compliance with our kids, especially with autism, because we have to have compliance in order to teach, right? Jack Riley's got a new baby sister, and he's struggled with that a little bit. But in this episode, what we're going to see is how Jack Riley has learned to appropriately get attention and how it was taught to him, and how he's learning to put different labels into categories, which is going to help him to make conversation. So take a look at the A word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack.
Jack Riley.
He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Hey, 2 seconds. Oh, yes. Hi. What's up? Can I put iPhone? Later.
Jack Riley is now gaining attention without prompts. When first teaching a new skill, a therapist does errorless learning, which is prompting a child with the correct response. 4 months ago, when gaining attention was taught, Jack Riley needed a gesture, physical, and vocal prompt to do it. As time progressed, less prompting was needed, like using only a gesture prompt or a partial vocal prompt.
Sure, which one do you want? Both.
Another skill they have been working on is categories. First, they teach it to him receptively.
Give me food. Where's the food? Good job.
Then they teach it to him expressively, first with prompts.
Tell me a furniture. Say say a couch. A couch is a furniture. Furniture. Good. So tell me a furniture. Couch is a couch. See, couch is a furniture. Good. So tell me a furniture. Couch is furniture. Yeah.
And then without.
Tell me a food. Okay. Apple is food. Good. Tell me another food. Watermelon is food. Yay! Watermelon is a food. Come here. Oh, you're so smart.
That's the A word. I want to remind all of you to be watching this series on YouTube. They have their very own channel. You can watch from the beginning. Now, while it's still fresh in our minds, I want to go back to, here we have this child who is bouncing on the bed. And we might be thinking to ourselves, okay, well, I want compliance here. I want compliance and I want this child to sit in the chair. All right, well, that's okay. And sometimes they do work with him on sitting in the chair because he's 3 now, and in a year he's going to go to preschool. But did you hear me say he's 3? And you got to, with compliance comes looking at priorities. So is it more important at 3 for him to be working on sitting in a chair, or is it more important at 3 for him to enjoy and love talking and interacting with a person? I'm going to vote that it's more, and it's different. And you might say differently. You might say, no, it's more important to sit in the chair, in which case you would be working on compliance for the chair and making sitting in a chair really reinforcing. But for this child in this particular moment, and at another time in a day, they'll work on sitting in the chair. But in this particular moment, the therapist, along with the family, has made the choice that him conversing with people and saying, that a watermelon is a food and thinking it's so exciting to be able to say that is more important in this moment. It's so important with compliance that we remember what's the priority in any given moment. And so when we're allowing him to jump on the bed because he's having a good time. He's pairing together. I get to jump on the bed and I'm talking. And he's finding both of these things very reinforcing. Is he always going to jump on the bed when he talks? No. But it's so okay for him to be doing it now, because it's age appropriate. And he knows that not only do I get to bounce on the bed while I'm talking to my therapist Jessica about different categories of food, and we saw that earlier he was sitting on the floor and doing it with the pictures, so he can do that, but he's so happy. He's jumping on the bed and he's jumping, and she says, tell me, a type of food. Watermelon. Yes, watermelon is a type of food. And then he gets to have his pillow sandwich, which this child finds so reinforcing. He's having a party. is what he's having, and he's learning while he's having a party, and he's being compliant, and he's listening to Jessica and doing other things that she asks him to do. And so when he gets down off the bed and she says, okay, come on, let's go and sit here and talk about this, he's willing to, because he knows, he trusts her, that she's going to have a good time ready for him, and that he's going to sit here and learn, and it's going to mean that he gets to have more of a party. This is the kind of compliance that we need to gain with our children. And I say this all the time because I think it's important that we get ABA going for our children, but not just any old ABA, right? All ABA is not equal, and I wish I could tell you that it was. It's not. And especially one of the things that's going to come with insurance reform, I hate to be a negative now, but we already know that there are some providers that are not getting the job done. Right? We've heard that from parents and from experts here in the studio. And with more and more insurance, when there's more and more money to be made, there's going to be more and more people, some of them incredible people, and some of them not so incredible. And it becomes our job as parents to kind of be looking and saying, okay, is this working for my child? And is it working the way in which it is supposed to? There are lots of different things that you can look at, but one of the things that I always point to, and you can see it very clearly on the A-Word episodes, is that if your child is not having a very good time in the vast majority of their therapy, then something is not right. There are going to be days and there are going to be times when your child is going to rebel and be at a growth spurt where they're going to assert themselves, and they're going to behave in a way that is problematic, and they're going to be whiny and crabby, and it doesn't matter who shows up, whether it was, Ronald McDonald or, I don't know who, Nemo could come to the door, and they're still going to be having a rough day, because we have rough days, right? They get to have rough days. So I'm not talking about that. And I'm not talking about when you are starting something, a new procedure, and your child is rebelling against it and having that extinction burst, right? But the vast majority of the time, doorbell rings, that the therapist is there, your child should be like, yay, they're here. It should not be, oh no, not them again. Oh really, no. That should not be the mood of your child. If it is, I'm begging you to look very closely. I hope you have a video monitor, that you're watching what's going on with your child when they're interacting with a therapist, that you're seeing that they're being reinforced, you're seeing that they're playing with your child, that your child is getting frequent breaks where they do something and then they get reinforced, and then they come back and do something and then they get reinforced, because you're not going to have a compliant, happy child. And guess what? Our children get to be the happiest people on earth. They do. Autism does not mean that they are unhappy. They face challenges, very real challenges, and they don't get to always learn things the way other kids do. But that doesn't mean they can't learn it. It doesn't mean it can't be really reinforcing. In fact, quite the opposite. It's got to be reinforcing, or they're not going to learn it. Now, I get so concerned about our kids with autism, and I talk about that because that's why we're here, right? But I want to point out, if you've got kids that are not on the spectrum, guess what? This is the most effective way of teaching them as well, by reinforcing. The studies on ABA for autism are very clear that it's effective with autism, but guess what? It's effective for all of us. We're going to start to watch the Olympics tomorrow night, right? And if you talk to, and you'll see some of the profiles with the coaches and with the athletes, watch very closely, because a lot of them use the principles of ABA to get the top performance out of their athletes. And by the way, it's not people who are making the athletes miserable. You see the joy that they love to go and do their practice sessions, even though it's difficult and they're in pain and it's hard work. They're enjoying it because they found the way that it's reinforcing to that individual, and the coach feeds on that. Well, that's what we want to be. We want to be Olympic coaches with our kids, and even though it's going to be tough, we're going to make it rewarding for them, so they want to come back and do it again tomorrow and say, yes, bring it on, I want to do it. That's what we want to do, and that's what they're doing with Jack Riley. So again, Go back, watch these episodes from the beginning, see how they make things reinforcing for Jack Riley. See how he's having a party every day, how thrilled he is when the doorbell rings, and sometimes it's hard. And yet he works through it and sees that he can trust these people because when he complies, it's always going to be good. Always. Always. Again, want to remind you priorities. I always tell the story about my friend who was sitting there and saying to me, I don't mean to laugh because we all do this. I myself have done this, but she was sitting and saying, I don't know what to do with him. I had this really well-behaved child and I don't know, it's like something changed and he doesn't listen anymore. This is a very typical little boy about to start kindergarten in the fall, and she said, I don't know what to do. He just doesn't listen. And it's like he turned into a teenager and he's 5 and he's going to kindergarten. I just don't know what I'm going to do. And something happened. We were sitting there having lunch. Something happened and she said something to him and he rolled his eyes like a teenager, better than a teenager. And he got up and was walking away from her. And she was furious. And she said, don't you walk away from me. Stop. And he stopped right where he was. This 5-year-old stopped dead in his tracks, even though she said it in that way, and she said, you come back here right now. And he turned around and he started walking back to her, and his shoulders, was like, ugh, I'm about to get it. But guess what? He was being compliant. Compliant in the face of knowing he was about to be punished. He was yelled at and he was compliant. Oh my gosh, that is compliance to the extreme. Do you know, that's a hard thing. You yell at somebody and say, come here because I'm going to yell at you? Who wants to come for that? And still he was being compliant. And, because it wasn't my child and because I was sitting on the outside and she had just said this, I opened my big fat mouth and because I could see it because it wasn't my child. And so he's marching back and I said, wow, that was wonderful. And she looked at me and he looked at me and I said, did you see that? You just asked him to stop and he stopped immediately. And you asked him to come here and he came immediately. I said, great job. What a great compliant kid you are. And he said, I am. And she looked at me and, like any parent, any good parent, she went, and she said, yes, honey, you are a very good boy. And he said, I am, Mom. And they had this moment and she said, yes. And then they were able to talk about, but I need you to not roll your eyes. Right? But remembering, if you're going for compliance, keep it in perspective. What do you want the child to be compliant with? A child that stops on a dime and comes back, eye rolling, yeah, well, there's always time to work on that. But I want a child who stops and who comes. And a child who will stop when being yelled at and come when they're being yelled at, that's a truly compliant child. And that needs to be reinforced. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to address your answers to the question of the day, both today and yesterday. And then at 10:30, don't forget, we are going to have Dr. Adel Najdowski in the studio with us, talking with us about autism in the classroom and a new tool that's available to all of us, Behavior Champ. You're just going to love it. So stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provide you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And it's that time of the day when we take on the question of the day. And we didn't have time yesterday to address yesterday's question of the day, so we're going to try to take on both of them a little bit, because at 10:30 we're going to be joined by Dr. Adel Najdowski. But our question today, and I keep laughing because you guys crack me up, was how do you recharge your batteries when you are exhausted? And your responses were hilarious. So somebody wrote in and said, good question. I'm so thrilled because a lot of you said, hey, if somebody can answer this, we'd really like to know so that we can know. Right? Somebody said, I try not to for the fact my boy can keep going and going, so I do my best to keep up with him, LOL. I'm so glad that we all have a sense of humor about this. Can I just say? Another person who says, very good question. I could use some ideas, please. Another person who said, I didn't know there was such a thing, refreshing your batteries. I know. Okay, you guys love to use abbreviations, and I don't know what they always mean. So somebody wrote, my DH. What is a DH? I don't know what that is. My DH tries to give me at least 1 day a month where I can disappear, where I can go do whatever by myself to decompress. Sometimes we can only manage to give a few hours. In those cases, I go in our bedroom and and turned, I don't know what that, put on a, must be turn out the lights, put on a sleep mask, earplugs in, and take a long nap. Love that. We used to have a thing where at least once a month, my husband, on a Friday night, a friend and I would go scrapbooking. And I don't know what happened to that. We don't do that anymore. But that was sort of my thing, that I could disappear at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and go scrapbook until midnight. And can I tell you, in the early days of autism, that one day a month, going with a friend and just connecting with her, it kept me on the edges of sanity anyway. Another person who says soft music and yoga. This is who I want to be when I grow up. And I need to get back to those kinds of things, because I talk about it here all the time. Meditation, soft music, and yoga, what a wonderful thing. I can just about, sit there or lay there and meditate, but the whole idea of yoga, very nice. Another person who says, if you could please let me know, LOL, love to know. Another person who says, as a mother, you just keep going no matter what. I know. Another person who says, gym, personal training totally clears my head, then I can sleep. Yes, you're another person that I want to be when I grow up. Another person who says, I can only dream. Another person who says, I teach a jazzercise class. Wow, that's fabulous. But the whole thing of teaching something that you do good at, that's another thing that I did in the early days of autism, that because I was a teacher, and I basically, the schedule was, when my son was going through early intervention, it was my choice that I was not going to be able to teach, that I could not do that. I took on other work, really had to figure out new things in my life and take on new skills, but I did, and it was all good for me. But after a period of time, and I was really missing teaching, what I did was just one night a week taught a class for a period of time. And that was so good for me, to remind me of who I was. And so if there's something that you can teach, whether it's a class that you go into a classroom, whether it's something that you do with 3 people in your home, my mom is a wonderful sewer. She's a wonderful quilter. She's a wonderful knitter. And from time to time, she'll go and give classes. Sometimes she volunteers to do it, to teach other people quilting. And it's a really wonderful thing, because you're doing something for somebody else, but it's also really good for us, for our soul. It's a wonderful thing. Another person who says, I would like to take a nap. Another person who says, I would take a nap if I could, thanks. And somebody else who says that they go out and go hunting and fishing. All right, then. That would not be on my list of things to do to refresh my battery, but I know that scrapbooking would not be on a lot of other people's lists. Yesterday, and there are more responses, but I don't know that we're going to have time to get to them. The question of the day yesterday was, if you could change one thing, what would it be and why? And I love, somebody who is a frequent sharer with us said, duh, I would change the fact that my child has autism, because I could live without it. Bless your heart. And somebody else said, about my child, about my life. Whatever goes on our questions of the day. And, I love this one. There would be no autism in this world. And I'm assuming, before everybody gets all up in arms about it, I'm assuming that when we talk about autism, we talk about the more disabling aspects of it, right? Because there are some good things that come with autism, right? But the more disabling aspects of it, we could do without that. So here's sort of an answer to that. How to isolate the awesome bits of autism from the bits that hurt, and then deal with those bits. Very good. I would change how people responded to my son. Other than that, I find my son perfect. Love that. Another person who says that everyone understood autism and be more compassionate to the struggles that we who struggle with it on a daily basis. Too many times my son and I get a head shake or a non-approving look when he has a meltdown in the grocery store. Yes, I know. Those people who, and I always think about it and I think, well, that's their reality. I can't do anything about that. And I can't even feel bad about that, because it used to be my reality. And quite honestly, I wasn't happy about when my reality changed. So I try to look at them and think, okay, I'm not going to be on a good day. On a bad day, I just go, you know what, grab a whoopee, or ignore them. That's really what I do on a good day. Another person who says, I would change living in the sticks to an area with more services. Oh, bless your heart. But remember, you can be doing CARD learning and skills, even in the sticks, If you've got the computer connection so that you can be writing on Facebook to answer the question of the day, that you could be doing CARD learning and skills. And I want to remind you, you can be applying for a grant for those services right now from ACT Today, Autism Care and Treatment Today, www.act-today.org. Okay. Another person who says that adults would be more flexible in dealing with all children. Love that, especially our kids. If they would open their minds, relax, and stop trying to bang all those square pegs into round holes. Every kid could learn better. Love that. Oh, you guys are lifting me up today. Another person who says that he would understand better. You know, working on that receptive language really helps, Another person who says to filter out all of the aspects of autism that make life hard for him. That's my mission in life, is to move the obstacles that are caused by autism out of my son's way so that he can fly through with the things that are not obstacles. Better daycare options, another person says. Another person who says people who investigate child abuse in daycare is not to look just past it because my child can't tell me what happens. The daycare wins. Not fair for us or whoever else family it happens to now or in the future. You know, I signed a petition yesterday for that was on change.org about getting cameras in the classroom. We had Richard Strip with us last week. He is the author, I had it here, but I moved it, of the book, Mommy, I Wish I Could Tell You What They Did to Me in School. And when I said to him, what would we need to do, to make it better for our kids in special day classrooms? What would we need to do? What would work? And he said, well, you know, the thing that would work, that would end all of this, is cameras in those special needs classrooms. And I got to be honest with you, it's not that never occurred to me before, but I don't think I ever connected the dots and thought, you know, seriously, that really is what needs to happen, and it would put a screeching halt to all the things that are going on. And maybe we can't all take on the world, but at your daycare, perhaps it's something you can take on there, that you can look and say, I only want to be in a daycare that has cameras. How much it's going to cost? Can we do a fundraiser? I'm sure the other parents would be interested in having it as well. And any daycare that says, no, we don't want cameras, well, that's not a daycare where you want to take your child, right? Clearly. So cameras in the special needs classrooms and in the daycares. Another person who says better healthcare options. My son is, and I don't know what that term is, CBAT. And they are kicking him out again, even though he's not ready and won't send him to another program. So either more funding or better options. I hope with insurance reform that that's exactly where we are heading. All right, we have to take a short break so that we can bring Dr. Adel Najdowski into the studio with us. Now is a great time for you, if you're watching autism-live.com and you see that it says live on your screen, now is a great time to be typing your questions in the question box, or to be emailing us, Facebooking, or tweeting us, I guess that's the phrase that we use, to tell us what you would like for us to ask Dr. Adel Najdowski. Stick with us. We're going to be back after these messages.
My name is Vince Redman, and I'm one of the regional directors for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. There's lots of things that are different working with teenagers than working with the elementary or early intervention kids. Puberty. I mean, the number one thing you have teenagers where their bodies are changing and their expectations are changing, their interests are changing. They start getting interested in boys and girls. They start getting interested in what their other peers are doing. They start getting interested in different fads that are going on. And plus, it depends on the level of severity within the disorder. You also have to be very careful that if you are a teenager, that they're not interested in certain things, meaning that they're still not interested in early intervention. They're not interested in like Barney or cartoons and Thomas the Train and those types of things, because they're not age appropriate anymore. Yet they still have that internal desire to be attracted to or to really like it. And I think that is just as important. But again, when we're looking at teenagers, there's a whole array based on the spectrum. But we're also looking at transitional living. They're learning. They have to start learning more self-independent skills. They're learning skills that are going to make them successful in school, at home, and at times when they're by themselves, to self-supervise. Can they make snacks? Can they make meals? Can they know how to turn on and off the TVs? Do they know how to use a telephone? Just on the top of my head, some basic skills that they need to know so that they can be able to be self-sufficient for certain periods of time. So, you have everything as sophisticated as social, boy-girl relationships and what's a fad, what's not a fad, what my friends think versus what my friends don't think, to very easy things to just, can they get to and from school? Can they, microwave some popcorn and can they use a telephone in a case of an emergency? So there's a wider range that when you're looking at teenagers, but it, to some extent there's similarities to early intervention, but it's a whole new world when we get into transitional skills and independent learning skills that are much different than when they were 5, 6, 7 years old. Now we're looking at 15, 16, 17, and the expectations on them are much different than they were when they were younger. So I think the programming changes, the expectations change, that their cognitive ability changes. They should be also learning more advanced abstract learning inferences, deception, sarcasm, belief systems, being able to plan, strategize, problem solve, much more abstract situations than concrete situations that they learned at a very early age. So there's lots that go into when you're working with teenagers. It's a whole new ball game. It's like, to some extent starting over, because there's a new list of expectations, there's a new list of needs, and there's a new list of concerns and deficits that come forth. And we strategize for those differently, we look at those differently and individually, and we set a new plan for there. Motivating teenagers is always a challenge, because for what every one kid likes, another kid likes something else. But we try to motivate them with things that are age appropriate as well. We want to stay away from some of their early motivations, which might have changed. Again, primary, such as food, we want to, we necessarily don't want to do that. Again, early childhood preferences, like certain videos or certain cartoons or certain toys, oftentimes aren't mature enough, or they're not age appropriate anymore. So we have to look at all new things. Many social things that are socially acceptable now are very appealing to our teenagers. iPods, iPhones, video games, computer games, even computer websites such as YouTube and things of that nature are very reinforcing to our kids. Also, privileges. One of the things I think we always have to remember is giving our kids privileges is very reinforcing. Being able to choose what movie they have for movie night, what dinner is going to be made that night, 10 extra minutes on the computer, things of that nature, which we're really reinforcing, because it reinforces them to be independent. It reinforces them to want to do that again. And it's done in a way that we would do with any of our teenagers.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and our wonderful guest right now, I'm so thrilled to have back in the studio, is Dr. Adel Najdowski. Thank you for being here.
How are you?
I'm great, and I'm so glad that you're here. You've been so busy, we haven't had a chance to have you back in the studio for a while, but I'm thrilled always to have you here.
Thank you.
I don't get to talk about it enough, but when I first, after having been a parent with a child on the spectrum for many years, and my child had intensive ABA going on in our house for 4 years, and I'd done a whole lot of things, but then I got to meet Dr. Najdowski, and you had me do CARDI learning, and that was huge and life-changing in and of itself. But then I had the opportunity that I would wish for anybody, and sometime I am going to write a book about it, but I had the opportunity to come to work here, and every morning I got to spend an hour with you picking your brain. And someday I'm going to write a book, Conversations with Dr. Najdowski, Najdowski, because it was so amazing. Like, I get chills even thinking about it now. The things that I learned in those 1-hour conversations, if you all had the benefit of that, believe me, I learned more. It was like every college class put together. I learned more in those conversations with you. It was just superlative, because you are a wealth of knowledge, and it was exciting, and I miss those hours.
I miss it too.
Well,
I wish we could do an hour every day still.
I know, I do too. And maybe someday we can work that out, because it was so wonderful. So when I have the opportunity to have Dr. Najdowski in here to talk to you guys, I just get so excited, because I know what those hours meant for me as a parent, and for me in terms of just my life. You know, I think I knew little bits, and I understood little bits of ABA, but it solidified for me.
Really?
It really did. It solidified for me. And I get it in so many other different ways, and it makes me question how much more I could know. Like, if I had more hours.
I'm learning new things every day. I've been reading a book at home right now that I'm just wowed by right now.
It's amazing to me. That
behavior analysis.
There's so much to know.
Yeah.
So you're learning every day too.
Yeah. I'm reading this great book right now.
Do you want to tell us what it is?
Well, it's edited by Ruth Ann Rayfeld, and it's called Derived Relational Responding. And it's all about this theory called relational frame theory, and how basically you can teach certain things, and then all of a sudden other things will be derived without direct teaching. And it's kind of going through the process of how you can use that for teaching individuals with developmental disabilities, including autism. And I'm learning all these things that make me want to go into the skills lessons and make some additional teaching points and stuff like that. It's
very
really exciting.
Yeah. And you see how excited she gets about it. This is the other thing that's very exciting to me too. And you know, it isn't just you. There are so many people who work here, and when I went to ABAI, I realized, oh, okay, and it's not just at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. You guys get excited about this stuff. And I don't completely understand that when you don't have a child who's on the spectrum. I get it if you have a child on the spectrum, why the idea of ways to teach a child, and you know, I get it. But the fact that you guys get excited about it is always this fascinating thing to me.
Yeah.
Makes me happy.
I mean, when it becomes my bedtime book and I'm literally reading it in bed, starting at, 10 until 11 every night, and rereading it so that I'm hopefully going to be able to actually talk about it and not just walk away going, that was pretty cool, but I actually don't know how to talk about that.
Right. No, that's exciting.
It tells you something might be wrong with me, or it's very interesting. I'm not sure which.
I think it's interesting, and it gives me hope for the world, honestly, to think, okay, there are better minds than mine working on these things, and being excited about it is very thrilling to me. So, in any case, thrilled that you can be here today. Wanted to talk to you a little bit about, we're in the summer, kids are at home, and there are less services at this moment, and we're right about the midpoint where kids are getting ready to go back to school. The teachers are getting ready to go back to school.
Yeah, that's freaking me out. How did the summer go by so fast?
Yes, but I think for a lot of us too, we're like, bring on the fall.
You're ready.
So that the child goes back to school and that there's more support. But I think there's some trepidation too, because there's always a push and pull with the whole school situation and sending autism into the classroom. But we're always about empowering people, empowering parents, empowering teachers, and there is real knowledge that if parents had and if teachers had, things could be more productive for all of our kids in the classroom, yes?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so, and this is not a blame thing about why aren't teachers doing this, why aren't they doing that, because teachers have a pretty full plate to begin with. But there are skills that they could gain that would help them to deal. Let's talk just specifically about the challenging behavior, because challenging behavior prevents the learning from happening, correct?
Yep. When you have the challenging behavior in a child, sometimes it's hard to work on things you're going to teach them because the challenging behavior gets in the way.
Yeah, and not only, does it get in the way for that child, but it gets in the way for all the children sitting around that child, perhaps for the whole classroom.
Which then sometimes results in the child just simply being removed from the class, which isn't always the best solution.
Yeah.
And so if we can help teachers figure out a way to manage that behavior in the classroom and still be effective, then that's the goal.
Yeah, always. And I always think, we hear parents and they say, oh, well, this is going on in the classroom, and so my child, we're having an IEP, and they want to put them in a different placement. Right. And my question always is, what is it that's happening? Because if it's challenging behavior, it's such an emotional, it seems like a crime to me that a child who could do the work, if it weren't for the challenging behavior, is going to be taken out of an environment in which they could have gotten all this other stuff, put in another environment.
Yeah, you just said something though. You said the child who could do the work if they weren't engaging in challenging behavior, but this gets back to we've had this conversation about the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they need some skills which will help reduce the challenging behavior. So.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good
so
point.
We always say, look at how severe the behavior is. If it's something where it's hurting the child or hurting someone else, putting anyone in danger, perhaps you can't work on teaching anything right now. You just need to get those behaviors under control. But if it's kind of less something that gets so involved and disrupts others, like maybe stereotypy or something like that, then it's a good idea to work on both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times our kids are behind, and it's not just our kids. There's a lot of kids right now in the school system that are behind in general.
Yeah, and they just don't have either communicative behavior or they don't have leisure type skills, and so they end up engaging in some of these challenging behaviors to literally fill their time.
Yeah. Which is scary to think of, but we can circumvent that and fill their time with other things if we're conscious of it and mindful of it.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we, chicken or the egg, where are we going to start? You say we might want to be working on both, working on their skills and their problematic behavior. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start working on skills, or you want to start working on the challenging behavior for our conversation today?
For our conversation, which one should we talk about?
Yes, first. Yes. Yeah. For the purpose of, because if we want to be working on both, what do we want to talk about first?
Let's talk about challenging behavior then.
Okay, let's talk about challenging behavior. And within the context of the classroom, challenging behavior would be all kinds of different things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be the child not paying attention, the child not staying in their desk, the child throwing their pencil on the floor so that they have to pick up their pencil and disrupt the whole class. It could be the child laughing ridiculously at inappropriate times.
Yeah.
It could be the child eating their paper. I mean, the list goes on, right? It's endless what it could be.
And any one child could have like 15 of these things or something that they're doing.
Right.
So you have to prioritize and figure out what are the most disruptive ones that we need to really have an intervention for right now. That way everyone can be more effective. If you're asking too much of people, then something is not going to get its full attention.
Okay, so first thing out the gate, we're not going to try to tackle every challenging behavior. We're going to prioritize and say what is really like the most crucial preventing learning.
Yeah, the top couple of things, maybe the top 3 or something. Yeah.
Okay, and then from there, what are we going to, because a lot of times the teacher will say, okay, well, so I know I can tell you what the child's doing, that if I could just make them stop, my life would be so much easier. I could teach them, and I could teach the other children. They've got the top 3. They know what the behavior is. They know what the behavior looks like. What are they going to do then?
To treat the behavior, it always boils down to the same thing. When it comes to a behavior, you have the events happening right before it that are going to be likely to provoke that behavior. So we all tend to engage in certain behaviors under certain conditions, so you can change those conditions. And then the other thing is once the behavior occurs, there's always going to be a consequence for it. And we need to look at what that consequence is, because whatever it is they're getting out of that behavior is maintaining it and making them repeat it.
And so that's what we call the function of the behavior, right?
Yeah, but the issue is that oftentimes teachers don't know how to figure that out and determine what's most appropriate, so they need to request a functional behavioral assessment be done. And that's why I say don't try to pick too many behaviors, because that's going to be a lot of work right there.
Right. So picking top 1, 2, at the most 3 things, and asking for a functional behavior assessment to be done. So who generally in the school setting, there are people that are available for teachers to be able to do that. Who generally is that going to be on a school setting?
Interestingly enough, it's not really that standardized in terms of knowing exactly what you're asking for. So your best bet is to say, I need an FBA, a functional behavioral assessment, to be done, and to request it to be done by a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst.
Okay.
Now, but what's in reality going on is that districts, some of them have BCBAs on staff. I would say it's probably just a few BCBAs to a lot of kids, so they may be understaffed and you may be finding yourself waiting for a while.
Right.
That's one issue. Other times, though, districts have, in addition to these BCBAs, maybe some other type of staff that don't have a BCBA, but they have maybe a title like behavior specialist, or maybe the school psychologist, autism specialist, something like that. And those people have been trained supposedly to implement functional behavioral assessments as well.
Okay.
But if I were a parent making a request, I would request a BCBA do it.
Okay. So really important that for you at home, if you see that if you're getting reports home from the teacher saying, you know, Johnny is throwing things and it's, you know, I'm making you aware of the fact, you don't have to just sit by and do nothing. You can put it in writing. I would suggest doing an email. We've heard from our legal people that that counts as in writing, and you can keep a record of it, and a record of the fact that they opened it, and say, you know, I'm hearing that my child is engaging in challenging behavior, he's throwing things. I am formally requesting that an FBA, a functional behavior assessment, gets done. Now, the school should know what that is, yes?
Yes.
And if they don't, we're in deep, deep doo-doo, right?
Yes.
That's the technical term for it. But they should know what it is. Big warning flag goes up if they don't know what it is. And you can request it. It is within your rights to request for that FBA. And what happens when an FBA gets done? What can we expect?
Basically, a BCBA will come in and they will observe your child. And they'll do it hopefully across different numbers of times of the day, maybe in different classroom settings. Most likely in the settings in which the teachers are reporting that it's occurring the most, because they actually need to observe the behavior to see what's going on. And they're going to essentially collect data on the antecedents, what's happening right before the behavior, the actual behavior, what it looks like itself, and then the consequences that are happening afterwards. And they'll do some sort of analysis to figure out what are the common themes going on, and what do we think the function of this behavior is? Why is the child engaging in it? Under what conditions are they doing it? So they can try to change those.
Yeah.
They may also do a couple of questionnaires or interviews of the teacher about it. And in some cases, they may go so far as doing like a slight experiment where they put the child under certain conditions. Like if they can't actually see the behavior naturally, they might try to do certain things that would evoke the behavior so that they can get an idea of what's going on.
Right. Really important, though, that top people who know what they're doing, trained people, that's the word that I want, are doing this kind of thing. And I think it's important as a parent that you ask questions about who is implementing the FBA and who's taking the data. Because it's been my experience as a parent that sometimes, you know, they'll say, oh, well, so-and-so is doing the FBA, but they're not on site when the data is being taken. Really important that you understand who's taking the data. It's very useful later on. Okay, so they look at this behavior and they set up circumstances so that they can see the behavior in different circumstances, different times of the day, and they are trained to be able to figure out what the function of the behavior is.
Yes.
What the payoff for the child is.
Yeah, what are they getting from this?
Okay. So now they come back and they've got a function of a behavior. And at some point, there's an intervention that is devised around that function of the behavior so that they can effectively and efficiently change the behavior.
Okay, so the truth is that once you know the function, then there's evidence-based procedures that can be used depending on what the function is.
Okay.
Scientifically proven, we know this already. We also kind of know which are the least intrusive, and we always will suggest starting with the least intrusive ones.
Okay.
And basically, you would design a behavior intervention plan, or what's referred to as a BIP, and that would become part of the child's IEP. And this is a plan that everyone who works with a child is consistently supposed to follow.
Right. And if you look at your child's IEP, their individualized education plan, there is a place right on the first page of it at the top where it says BIP, or BIP as some of us like to call it, attached. If your child is engaging in any challenging behaviors, that little box should be checked. And if it's not, it's time to ask for the FBA. I know we get into alphabet land, right? You ask for the FBA and you ask for that BIP, and then attach it to the IEP, which now makes it part of the legal document which everybody has to adhere to. and if they don't, it's curtains, right?
And I'm going to just interject and say, in case anyone's joining us now, FBA is Functional Behavioral Assessment.
Thank you.
And BIP is Behavior Intervention Plan. I know it's hard.
I know, it's all the jargon. We do cover this at some point in the loop of the jargon. Okay, so one of the things that I've been talking about from time to time and that I'm really excited about is that as part of the skills program, you have something called Behavior Champ, yes? Yes.
Yay.
And what I'm really excited about is that once you have the function of the behavior, you can go into the Behavior Champ, plug the function of the behavior in, and it guides you step by step through a process where you can devise this using the evidence-based, what did you say? What was the phrase you used?
Evidence-based procedures.
Yes. And it helps to guide you through what is least intrusive so that you don't have to know all this stuff and figure it out.
Yep.
It's like a decision tree, and you get to, it points you in different directions so that you can see exactly what the intervention is.
And the reason why I love it so much and I'm so excited is because even, you know, having a PhD and having done consultation for schools and written many BIPs, I don't think I would ever write another BIP without using this program, which is so cool because it prompts you to think of all of your options.
Right. It gets rid of human error, of lack of remembering in a circumstance for something, because it shows you all of your options, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's so cool. And what I love about this is that if we can get enough people to understand that this is an option for them, we know that schools, the number of BCBAs or school psychologists to the number of kids that could use the help, it's not a good ratio, right? But if all they have to do is come in and do the FBA, and then the rest of the team can sit down and very effectively come up with the intervention plan, it frees that person up to go and do the thing that only they can do.
Completely. And maybe they just take a look at the plan and make sure it's not missing any components or anything like that. In a comprehensive behavioral intervention plan, you need to have there's 3 sections, and the first section is your antecedent manipulations or modifications. So remember, we're looking at what's happening before the behavior that's basically provoking that behavior, and we want to change those conditions. So in a BIP, you should have a section on what modifications you're going to do to the antecedents.
Okay.
What are you going to do to not provoke the behavior anymore?
Okay, and in a second we're going to come up with an example for that.
Yeah.
So that's one section, the changing what happens before. Then what's the next section?
Then you have your replacement behavior section. So you can't assume that you just get rid of a behavior and you're not going to teach them any alternative behavior to serve that same function of that original behavior. The idea is that if you don't teach a replacement behavior, then they're going to probably find some other challenging behavior to engage in to get what it is they need, right?
Can I tell you that that's one of the things that you solidified for me in that hour that we would meet, because you would always say to me, where's your replacement behavior? When I would come in with scenarios for you, you'd say, where is the replacement behavior, Shannon? And it finally got through my thick skull that, of course, because we can't just take things away. You know, the universe abhors a vacuum. If we take a behavior away, another behavior is going to come along, and we should be in control of what that behavior is. It just finally made sense to me.
Yeah, if everyone's doing something for a payoff, that means they want that thing, they're trying to get it.
Of course.
And they're engaging in this challenging behavior to get it. Now, if we suddenly intervene on that, we get rid of that challenging behavior, but we don't teach them a different way to get it what they want, then they'll just find another challenging behavior to get that thing. So you've got to think of something that will work for them as a replacement. So that's your second part of your BIP that needs to be there.
Okay.
And then the third part is the consequence modifications. So again, everything's based on A, B, C, antecedent, behavior, consequence. Now we're looking at the consequences of what that challenging behavior is, and we're going to change what those consequences are. So if the child is doing something, they're getting a payoff, they won't get the payoff anymore, hopefully. In some cases, maybe you have to keep that in. It just depends on certain factors and all that, but the Behavior Champ program will guide you through all this and help you to decide. Now, the idea is that you should make sure that you're picking components for the 3 sections of the BIP, and when you don't, what happens is the Behavior Champ creates a report and says you didn't pick anything for this section, which will prompt you basically to realize, oh, I need to add something here.
Okay, great. I think we should take a little bit of a break. I want to come back and go through these 3 sections and come up with some scenarios so that we can all learn and go, oh, okay, you know, because I think it's easier when you have examples. And then we're going to show you a little bit of Behavior Champ so that you can see what this is. It's amazing, life-changing. I think it's going to change the way schools look at challenging behavior, which is good for all of us. Stick with us. More with Dr. Adel Najdowski after these messages.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day, where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. What's an institution? A hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, you know, make simple desire requests. I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
My name is Deli Popola, and I'm one of the creators of theAutspot.com. TheAutspot.com is an online support system for families and specialists who are affected by autism across the whole world. Share inspirational stories, find resources in their area. Hope you can join.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And our special guest continues to be Dr. Adel Najdowski, and she is here with us right now, and we're about to show you Behavior Champ, one of the things that we've been talking about, because when we have a challenging behavior, at some point we have to do that FBA, that functional behavior assessment, to find out the function of the behavior, but then we want a behavior intervention plan.
Yes.
Always, whether it's in the school or at home, when we want to target a behavior to change it, we want to have a plan,
yes.
right?
Yes.
But we're talking specifically today about when it's in the classroom and how effective something like this could be in the classroom.
Yes.
So if you're just joining us, the FBA, Functional Behavior Assessment, has to be done first.
Correct.
Because you need to know what the function of the behavior is, and not everyone is qualified to do an FBA. But if you've done the FBA and you've got the function of the behavior, pretty much anybody could plug it into this Behavior Champ, and we can create a really solid behavior intervention plan that everyone should be able to read and follow, which that's exciting to me as a parent.
I know it is, isn't it?
It's very exciting because it's going to save a whole lot of time. I think this is really money saving, and heaven knows.
It's going to save time for professionals too.
Absolutely, and to have the peace of mind to know as a parent that this is written and it's got guidelines that are evidence-based, as you said, that it's following, and that it puts it in a language that anybody coming in can read it and understand it. So much of the time, that's the problem that we see in classrooms. A child engages in challenging behavior, and whether it's a substitute or the lunch lady, somebody doesn't know the right response, and it all falls apart, and then it gets blamed on the child.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be. If we can all follow a plan, we can all address this behavior and know that we're doing right by the child.
Right.
Okay, so take us in here, and we're going to show some of this on your screen so that hopefully you can see. And this is, we should mention, a part of skills.
Yes.
And for somebody who doesn't know what skills is, give us the refresher. I talk about it all the time because I use it at home. But tell them what skills is.
Skills is basically an online treatment management program that can be used by parents, teachers, and professionals. And it provides comprehensive assessment, curriculum lesson plans that are linked directly to that assessment, and progress tracking as well as reporting. And then the challenging behavior section includes this behavior champ. Now, behavior champ in and of itself is something that people may just be interested in, alone.
Absolutely.
So it is going to be available independent of skills at some point. We're just not quite there yet.
Okay. But it is a part of skills right now. And for those of you who, don't have an education background, because the word assessment, we throw that around a lot. And if you're not somebody who is a teacher or a psychologist, it's not really a word that we use in everyday life.
I should say skills assessment. So what it does is it basically asks you questions to find out what skills your child has versus doesn't have in his or her repertoire based on what he or she should be able to do for his age. So it's comparing to typically developing peers and what peers of the same age would be able to do across every single area of human functioning, and pinpointing what the things are that your child needs to learn.
So it just asks you the questions, you answer the questions, and based on your answers to the questions, it says, here's a pool of lessons that would be good for your child. You can pick and choose amongst those where you want to start, although it gives you guidelines to help you to decide what's appropriate for your child. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's over 20 years of compiled lessons that have worked. These are the exact same lessons that my child had when he was going through ABA. And as I said, now that he's not having an ABA program where people come to the home, I still use this at home, and I think it's wonderful. I swear by it.
I'm really excited because we've gotten so much positive feedback from parents who are using it.
Yeah, and you've got parents all over the world that are using it, which is really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be the first one to admit that I was skeptical. You remember those conversations about parents using it? Simply because, it's a tool that was created by professionals. It involves what we do professionally being made available publicly for other agencies and schools to be able to use and implement. Having a parent get into that world scared me and made me think, we were going to have all these issues. But the truth is that, having a professional, while that's what we would hope for every family, it isn't the case that it's even possible for every family. And holding those families back from being able to at least be dedicated enough to try to do it on their own just doesn't seem right.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that about this. And I think, there were a lot of people that had trepidation about, was a parent really going to be able to do this and use this tool the way it was meant to be used? And my thing always was, you have no idea how desperate we are. You have no idea how desperate we are. You want us to climb a mountain to get the information? We'll climb the mountain.
So it's like parents who do well with it are basically committing themselves to learning the ins and outs of behavior analysis the way that professionals do it. So they're kind of like going through some serious training to become almost a professional without really getting the degree and going to school and everything. And, what's really interesting is right now I'm reading a lot of literature about parent training. And I was looking at some studies recently where they actually trained parents to be the therapists and the managers of their children's intensive behavioral intervention and the effects of it. And the results are showing, or have shown from studies, that kids are increasing in their adaptive language and intellectual functioning when parents are taught to do these things. It's just not at the same level yet as it is with professionals. But it's not as though the kids are just flatlining and not learning. It may not be at the same pace. But gains can be made.
And we talk all the time because people will write in and say, am I going to be as effective as somebody else coming in? And we talk a lot about the fact that it's harder for parents because you have a relationship with your child, you have baggage with your child. I know that I can teach my child something. I know that it's infinitely quicker and easier if I have somebody else start the thread, somebody else lays the groundwork, and then I pick up the ball and carry it, because they can get to it quicker because they don't have to go through what we ate for breakfast.
I just didn't want to give the impression that parents who use skills are going to get the exact same thing they would get if they went through
I appreciate
a team of professionals. I want them to understand
It's hard.
It's different.
It's hard, and you have a bigger baggage to carry to get through to the child, but it can be done. And if you've got nothing else to do, this is a huge, huge miracle, because anybody can use this anywhere.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. Not easy. Okay, so take us into back in the classroom now.
Okay.
And the teacher, the parent has asked for the FBA. The FBA has been done. We have a function now, and the teacher and the team, the IEP team, are sitting down, and they're sitting in front of Behavior Champ.
Okay.
And we're right there. There's a page here that Emily's going to show it to you. It says Behavior Intervention Plan Builder. This is Behavior Champ.
Yep.
We've got a choice between create a report and view a report. But I see right away, we see general behavior categories, and for us to select one.
Yeah, so creating a report basically means this is going to help you to create your behavior intervention plan. So it assumes you've already done your functional behavioral assessment. Your first step is to pick a general behavior category.
And look at this list.
And by the way, if you don't see your behavior listed, on the very bottom there's an other option that you can select. But let's say the child is engaging in aggression. Okay?
Love it.
And let's say that they are throwing objects at others.
And immediately what popped up, as soon as you put aggression, was this other menu of things to pick between: hitting, kicking, punching, pinching, headbutting, scratching,
And these are
grabbing.
just the most common ones. So if you don't see yours here, then again, you could just choose the other underneath this drop-down menu.
Okay.
Now the next step, believe it or not, is you have to provide a definition, an operational definition is what we call it, of that behavior, because if people are going to be measuring it to see if the intervention is effective or not, they need to know exactly what it is they're measuring. If you were to have two different people observe, and one was to say, oh, the child engaged in throwing objects 10 times, and another one said 50 times, we have a problem, right?
Right.
So what are we defining throwing objects as? And it seems straightforward, but it really isn't.
Right. No, I know. My son was a swiper. He would swipe things off the table, and we had to define exactly what that meant. That was him putting his arm on the table and pulling things with his arm off the table. Because there were some times when he would just do this with his finger, and that didn't count. Right? Putting his arm on the table and swiping.
Yeah, and we might care about the difference between throwing objects at others versus just throwing objects, because they may be two totally functionally different behaviors in the sense that one of these behaviors is done for a certain reason and another one's done for a different reason.
Right.
So throwing at others probably needs to be defined as the object going in the direction of another person and landing within a certain length of that person or something like that. And then if it doesn't fit within that criteria, it's not considered at others. Do you know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Okay, so going back to the behavior champ, you would write that information in. So I'm not going to spend the time to write it right now, if you don't mind. I'm just going to kind of give some nonsense so we can move on.
Something there.
Okay, so now the functional behavioral assessment's been done, so you'll have a drop-down menu, and this is like a whole nother discussion in another Autism Live episode, which is functions of behavior, but most functions of behavior fit into one of these four categories. So let's say that your functional behavioral assessment is that the child's throwing objects at others, because the most common consequence they get for doing that is they get lots of attention.
Love it.
So your
And it doesn't
functional
matter whether it's
behavioral-
good attention or bad attention, it's just
That's
attention.
correct. And your functional behavioral assessment already knows it's attention, so you don't need to be concerned with that. You just mark that off.
Okay.
Now, based on how you mark that off, you're going to get a series of usually less than 10 questions, so that's one of the nice features. It's not a lot of questions.
Okay.
And these questions are going to describe certain things that you might want to consider, and if you want to include those or not in your intervention plan. So you'll notice that they all start with some really jargony title that is going like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Attention, esteem, manipulation, what is that?
Right. But you know what I love about that is that you explain it underneath, and so not only do I get to understand what I'm talking about, but I start to build that jargon term as well.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant, actually. We just tell people don't be freaked out when you see these titles.
Yes.
They're just titles, and then you read the paragraph underneath. It defines it for you.
Yep.
And then in addition to that, our whole idea behind this was people, once they get really familiar with using the behavior champ, and they've used it for many different behaviors, they're going to memorize what's in those paragraphs. They're not even going to need to read them anymore. They'll just see the title and mark yes or no. It's going to create more efficient responding to the questionnaire. So we need little short titles. It's important.
Yeah.
And why not have them be the real term so that you're learning what these things actually mean?
We have to make friends with the jargon at some point. I didn't want to, but we have to. So great. Okay.
So like, let's take a look at this first one that's asking us a question here. It's the attention SD manipulation, and it says, in some cases, settings or triggers, which are called SDs in technical terminology, can be changed in order to avoid the attention-seeking behavior happening. This procedure is called SD manipulation. So for example, instead of saying, I don't have time to play with you right now, I need to do my work, which usually, you know, allows someone to understand, I'm not going to be able to give you attention, right? Right. You could simply sit down next to the individual with your notebook and begin doing work, thereby not directly pointing out to the individual that you're not going to be paying attention to them. Do you want to include some sort of SD manipulation in your intervention plan? Now you get to decide yes or no. This option wouldn't be presented to you if it wasn't already evidence-based. So it's not going to hurt you to say, yeah, I want to do this.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? But keep in mind that the more parts of the BIP that you include, the more procedures, the harder it is for consistency with implementation. So if you have a team of people that have to implement this BIP and you just love picking lots and lots of components to your BIP, you're making it more difficult for the staff.
Right.
So keep that in mind and not try to pick every single thing.
Okay.
Okay? You can change answers too if you realize you answered something and then you see another option later and you go, oh, you know what? I don't really want that other thing anymore or something.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
All right, so let's answer yes to that question.
All right. I like it.
Now, depending on how you answer some things, you get presented with more things. So this next option is called Attention NCR, and it'll define it for us. So it says, one possible treatment option for challenging behavior motivated by attention is non-contingent reinforcement, or NCR.
Which was our jargon yesterday. That was our jargon term yesterday, in fact, yes.
Okay. So you're going, what is non-contingent reinforcement? Well, this procedure involves the free delivery of attention regardless of the child's behavior, usually immediately before problem times or on a regular schedule. So for example, you might provide attention every 5 minutes regardless of what your child is doing.
Yeah, you're filling that bank. You know the child's driven by attention, you just keep putting attention into the bank, filling up the bank. Even though they haven't asked for attention, you're just going to keep them not needing to ask for it. I love it.
So which section would you think you would imagine this would fall into on the BIP? The antecedent, the replacement behavior, or the consequence?
I think that would be antecedent, because it's changing what's happening before they get to the point where they need to get attention.
You have an attention-hungry child. They're engaging in throwing objects to get attention. You go, okay, they really want attention. Let's just give them some free attention every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And see if that helps to satiate the child or make them feel satisfied. They're getting enough attention. They don't even need, it kind of prevents almost the need to even engage in the challenging behavior.
Right. It can be very effective.
Yeah, it's very cool. Okay, so do we want to include that or not? Well, sure, why not? Let's say yes to that one. Okay, the next thing says attention FCT. So now we're discussing replacement behaviors, which is a component you must have in your BIP, which we talked about earlier. This can include appropriate communication, leisure activities, etc. Intervention plans that do not include replacement behaviors are often considered incomplete, so we need to try to make sure we have something. It'll now ask, do you want to teach the individual an appropriate way of asking for the form of attention that is maintaining their challenging behavior? And lets you know that communication is generally considered the best replacement behavior to teach whenever possible. So if you have a kid that's engaging in challenging behavior for attention, why not teach them a new response that's communicative and says, I need attention, and they can simply ask you for attention using that behavior. That's what the FCT would do.
What does FCT stand for?
Functional Communication Training, which...
okay. Fabulous.
Yeah.
So, wonderful, because we always want to be teaching functional communication, right?
Yeah.
Always.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say we say yes, we want to do that.
I love it.
Okay, next option, attention competing item. So it says, for occasions in which it is not possible or not appropriate to give the individual attention, is there an acceptable item or activity that can keep the person busy while you're not able to give them attention?
See, this would never have occurred to me. This is great, because this is exactly, my son is very needy right now because it's summer, and I never think about that. Like, I could give him something, I can't give you my attention right now, but give a replacement. Here's what you can do until I can.
At points, like, let's say you need to make a phone call.
Yes.
Isn't it funny how kids immediately engage in all their challenging behavior when you can't give them?
The minute I pick up the phone, the minute he wants my attention.
That's a trigger or an antecedent that sets the occasion for attention-seeking behavior, because they kind of know they're being deprived at that moment of attention. So why not do a competing item whenever you're going to make that phone call?
Yeah, and I can do that beforehand.
Yeah, you can say, okay.
I don't have to, I can teach them how to appropriately ask for the thing, or I can just give it to them beforehand.
Yeah, this would be an antecedent modification saying, okay, I don't want him to engage in the attention-seeking behavior under this particular condition, so I'm going to give him a competing item. This is something that's going to keep him busy so he's in need or bored or whatever, and wanting attention at the moment. Hopefully this will compete with his need for attention.
Right. So for a teacher, if there's a moment in time when you know that you're not going to be able to give that non-contingent attention because you've got to focus on another child.
A certain activity maybe during the day or something.
Right. So instead of saying to myself, oh, you know, I got to juggle and I got to give this kid attention while I'm trying to give this other kid attention, you could beforehand know that there's something that the child in question who's attention-starved particularly loves, give them something, and know that they're going to be kept busy for a few minutes and you're not going to have to give them attention.
Exactly.
And save yourself a whole lot of frustration. Love it.
All right, well, I'll just say no to that just because we need to get some different answers up here.
Okay.
Okay, our next option is attention DRO. So
it's jargon land. Okay.
If you have chosen not to teach communication as an alternative behavior, so you really only use DRO. DRO, it kind of describes later in another sentence, is differential reinforcement of other behavior.
Right.
I kind of wish it was called I kind of wish it was differential reinforcement of the absence of behavior, because that's really what it is. They say other because it's like whatever's happening at the moment during a certain schedule.
Okay.
That's not the challenging behavior. And because of the need for there to not be the challenging behavior, it should really be like differential reinforcement of the absence of behavior.
Okay.
But the idea is it's when you tell the child, if you don't engage in this particular behavior, then you will get this, or you don't necessarily tell them, but you have a rule in place that you know you're going to follow.
Right.
You're going to get this reinforcer if you don't engage in the behavior for this particular schedule.
Okay.
So like let's say every 10 minutes you're going to give them, you know, some reinforcer that's going to last like a minute or something like that if they haven't engaged in the challenging behavior during that 10-minute period.
Right.
So you're reinforcing the absence of the behavior. The problem here is that in this procedure you're not teaching a replacement. Do you notice that?
I do notice that. I do notice that, and that scares me a little bit. And I'm even thinking, because right now I'm doing this with Jem at night. I need for him to go to bed and stay in bed. And so what we're doing is reinforcing when he doesn't get up and talk to me, he gets one sticker, and when he gets 7 stickers, he's going to get this computer program.
So you're using a DRO.
Right, but you know what I've done wrong, Adele, is that I haven't put a replacement behavior in, and so he keeps coming in and talking to me because I haven't put a replacement behavior in.
In some cases you can't do a replacement behavior, and that's why DRO exists, and you know, it's just not always possible. But I will tell you that with your particular son, what you could do, because you don't want to give him a replacement behavior that just gets him out of the bed all the time, because then he'll just keep doing it and abusing it, right?
Right.
So you could do something where you give him like one. Have you heard of the bedtime pass?
Yeah.
You give him the pass, and he can use that one time to come out. Other than that. And it doesn't have to be for the bathroom. It could be for whatever he wants.
Okay.
To give you a hug, whatever, as long as it's reasonable. It's not going to be sitting down to watch a movie or something, you know. That's going to take an hour.
But I'll tell you what I think I'm going to do, based on what you just said. I'm going to put a pad and a pen by his bedside, because sometimes it's just stuff he wants to remember to tell me, and he's afraid he's going to forget it. So he'll come in and tell me. So instead, this is my new replacement behavior for tonight, that he can write me a note, and I'll read it in the morning, so that he won't forget it, because he goes, well, I was afraid I was going to forget to tell you. And now I'm awake. And I'm cranky. And nobody likes it when I'm cranky.
Maybe he doesn't even sleep well because he just keeps reminding himself internally, like self-talk. I need to tell mom this, I need to tell mom this, I need to tell mom this. You know when you wake up in the middle of the night and you think of a bunch of things you need to do the next day, and you can't actually go back to sleep because you keep rehearsing it, and then actually just writing it down gets rid of that?
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. That's going to be my replacement. Okay, so, all right.
But let's read this little paragraph here about attention DRO. So it says, if you have chosen not to teach communication as an alternative behavior, and you've chosen not to make alternative items or activities available to keep the individual busy, then you do not yet have any form of replacement behavior in the intervention plan. You may want to consider differential reinforcement of other behavior, DRO. It involves delivering a reinforcer after the individual has not engaged in the challenging behavior for a specified period of time. The reinforcer can either address the function of the behavior directly, so in this case, the child's behavior is maintained by attention, so if they don't engage in the challenging behavior for every 10 minutes, they're going to get attention. That's the best, probably, reinforcer to give. But it can also maybe be an arbitrary reinforcer. So like, let's say the child's engaging, it's not like throwing an object for attention. Let's say maybe instead the child's engaging in some stereotypical behavior like hand flapping, and what's maintaining that is just automatic reinforcement. It's self-reinforcing. Then it's not something you can really control, right? So. And you can't necessarily provide some other reinforcer that's going to be equally self-reinforcing. You might be able to try, but you're just kind of hypothesizing what that is about it that's self-reinforcing. So maybe you do an arbitrary reinforcer instead that doesn't serve the same function.
Right.
Am I talking too jargony, or am I okay?
It's, you know what, it's a lot of jargon, and my head is starting to spin. But one of the things, and I was just thinking about that, one of the things I want to make sure that parents know is that what's great about this is that you get to spend time with it. You're not expected to be able to understand and get it all in one fell swoop. And in the school setting, you're going to be working with people who understand a great deal of this, but have it all laid out for them is going to make it foolproof.
Yeah.
And so as a parent, it's going to take you a little while. It certainly took me a little while. Don't expect that you're going to understand it all. But what's going to happen is as you read these things and begin to understand them and implement them and have people explain them to you, you're going to understand more and more. And it does all start to make sense as you get to the bottom. We're picking it apart a little bit, but it does make sense when you get to the bottom. So don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed. I know we only have you for a few more minutes.
Yeah.
But...
Well, let me discontinue answering these questions. You get the idea, and basically once you answer your 10 or so questions, it'll say, are you finished? Would you like to submit your answers? And you do that. And then you will get an automatically made report. But let me just answer these quickly, so we'll have a report for this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to use DRO. Is the behavior dangerous? No, not really, because they're throwing little objects and usually missing the people they're throwing them at.
Okay. These are great questions. So
is it safe to ignore? They ask you this because sometimes it's not even safe to ignore the behavior.
Absolutely.
Yes, it is. Is it practical to ignore? Well, yeah, I can ignore that. That's okay. It won't really be too disruptive. It's not usually directed towards the students or anything.
Okay,
and
love this.
So then based on that, it asks, do you want to use extinction? And I'm not going to define that right now, but I'm going to say yes.
Our word today was extinction burst, so we already talked about extinction today.
Okay, cool. And then I click Create Report. Interestingly, I can continue with another function, though, if I need to. Sometimes children behave or do a certain behavior for more than one reason.
Right. It could be attention and to get something out of it.
But I don't have that case, so I'm going to create my report, submit my answers, and then now I can see my report that it automatically generates. This is a BIP.
There you go. And it's that easy.
And I can see my sections, antecedent replacement consequence, and I have certain things I said I wanted to do. And it's written out for the staff to follow, the teachers. It says for SD modification, change commonly occurring signs and signals that tell the child that they're not going to get attention. In order to avoid setting the occasion for attention-seeking behavior, signs and signals you're going to change are, and then there is a blank for you to type in what you're going to change. Or if you feel like this is still too jargony, you could go like this and rewrite it in really simplistic terms.
So you can totally
the next thing that you put in was you wanted attention NCR. So it says provide frequent positive attention to the individual for free, regardless of what they're doing. Give attention to the following schedule. And you could say you're going to give, every 5 minutes or something. And then the next one is teach functional communication. Frequently prompt the individual to request attention from others and give lots of positive attention immediately when she requests it. And the form of requesting we're going to teach is, some kids it's literally raising their hand, others it's tapping someone on the shoulder, others it's holding up a green card, whatever it is.
Right.
The prompt that we'll use to prompt the requesting behavior is, because you're going to have to prompt it at first until they start doing it independently on their own.
Right.
You list what you want people to do. And then it says prompting must be done before the challenging behavior occurs, not as a reaction to it. And the method that we're going to use for fading out the prompting is, because as they start to learn, if it's like a raise your hand kind of thing you're teaching, and you're prompting them to raise their hand, but now they're just starting to do it on their own, we're going to start to fade out the prompt. So maybe you only prompt, every whatever.
Right.
You can decide how often.
Okay.
Same thing with replacement behavior. You're going to say what kind of requesting you're going to teach the child to use. This is where you might put in raising your hand or whatever it is.
Right.
And then for the consequence, we're using attention extinction, which just basically means we're not going to provide attention anymore when the child throws the object.
Okay.
So now instead they're getting attention for their replacement behavior.
Okay. I just have to say Because one of the reasons why this is so wonderful is so often as a parent you feel like you're at sea and that you don't understand what the language is and you don't understand what's going on. And there was a period of time in which my son was going to school and we asked for an FBA. I knew enough to ask for an FBA, and the FBA was done of a form, I'm just going to say that, and the IEP team, including myself, sat down to write the behavior intervention plan. We didn't have this, and it was the single most frustrating experience I've ever been through in my entire life. It took 3 meetings, it took a total of 6 hours of like 8 professionals, and when we were done...
And probably arguing over what components to include or not include and why they made sense or didn't make sense and all that.
And at the end, I didn't know whether what we had arrived at was evidence-based or not. I really didn't, and I was frustrated. And so the next time, you want to talk about, you know, being aversive, the next time it came up about doing a behavior intervention plan for something, I literally got sick to my stomach. I literally did. Horrible. Because I didn't want to sit in a room with these people for 8 hours. And there was one time when I had arranged for 2 people from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders to come with me so that I would be able to understand what was going on. And they both came, and 5 minutes before the meeting was canceled. So, you know, these people who were coming away from other things that they needed to do with other children, it was just so frustrating to me. I mean, you want to talk, you know, just like all the pressure right up in my neck. If I had had this to sit down with them, I would have felt like I was not only somebody on the bus, but that I was help steering the bus. And that I could be confident that what we were doing was appropriate. So this is amazing. Even if you don't understand everything in it right this minute, right now, it's an amazing tool for parents. So thank you so much for showing it to us.
I'm sorry we had no time to talk about teaching skills, but...
That's okay, we'll have you back.
I think we can do that next time if you want.
Okay, absolutely wonderful.
All right.
We have to let you go now because I know you've got meetings that you have to get to, but stick with us because we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and talk about the myth of the day, and we also have our executive functions tip for the week, so stick with us.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3. They shut down, and sometimes you think of the typical Rain Man movie. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up.
She didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys and that was about it. We have a team of 7 volunteers, or 8 now. We have 8 volunteers, including my husband and I. And I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks. And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial base? What Skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing something, missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where Skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7. They have a program for that.
What noise is this?
Good job! Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before Skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? You know, because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know, and in most manuals you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for Skills. and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November. It seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis, and now with this new skills and being, you know, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child because in 7 months' time, she's just blossomed into this normal, functioning child, and suddenly, we joke about it all the time, like suddenly we have twins.
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. It's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We just had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Adel Najdowski that went by too fast. We were talking about autism in the classroom and a new tool, Behavior Champ, and I want to remind all of you that it is in the Skills program. Skills is that online tool that you can be using wherever you are. You can be using it in conjunction with, if you already have ABA services coming to your home, you can be using Skills in conjunction with that. In fact, it may be that your ABA provider is also using Skills and you can talk to them about that. Or you can be using it in conjunction with what they're doing. I've mentioned that it's what I use at home with my son now that his ABA services, his formal ABA services are done. But you can do Skills and CARDI learning wherever you are in the world. If you have an internet connection, you can be utilizing these wonderful tools. They are not very expensive, but I know that finances and the economy the way it is, that even as inexpensive it is, it might still be out of reach for some of you. Please don't be embarrassed or ashamed of that. There was certainly a great portion of the time when I was going through early intervention with my son where I couldn't have afforded another thing. In fact, I couldn't afford the things that we already had, right? So don't be embarrassed, because I totally get it. But what I can tell you is that there are grants available. No one within the sound of my voice needs to be without these services. If you cannot afford it easily right now, then forgive yourself for that, because that's just what it is, but don't cheat yourself out of these tools. You can apply at Autism Care and Treatment today. The address is right up there for you. They are in a grant phase right now. Until the end of the month, you can apply for a grant for whatever it is you need. If what you need is CARDI learning and what you need is Skills, ask for it. You can ask for a year subscription, a 2-year subscription, ask for what you need. They are thrilled to be able to provide grants for things like CARDI learning and Skills. By the way, they provide grants for other things like iPads. They provide grants for assessments to be done for your child if you need to get a formal diagnosis and you can't afford to do that. They help with things like copay, whatever it is that you need. You get to determine that. Please go to their site today, check it out, and apply for a grant. You only have a couple of more days, and then I won't be able to say that, I think, until the end of the year, if possibly not until 2013. So apply for a grant. Yes, there is a waiting list, so I cannot guarantee that your grant will be fulfilled, but I will tell you that we're trying to, as much as we can, be as positive as we can, and people who do fundraising do a wonderful job there. So many, many grants will be fulfilled, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I know that they love to give grants for people to have access to CARD e-learning and skills, that's a really wonderful thing. Now it is time for our executive functions tip of the week, if you will. And by the way, I brought this slide up so that you can see in the skills program there are 8 different curricula areas, and one of them is executive functions. Another one is cognition, and I will tell you that these are lessons you aren't going to find anywhere else. This is cutting edge. It's research and lessons that have been done by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and this doesn't exist in any other form, and it's amazing, especially for those of you, it doesn't matter where your child is on the spectrum, there are 3 different areas of the skills curriculum that I know you're going to find useful. So even if you have a 22-year-old child who's very high functioning with Asperger's, and you say, I really don't need the skills program, I'm going to say to you, yes, you do. And I'll tell you why you need it. You need it for the social skills section, if nothing else for the social language. For our kids with Asperger's, it's amazing. I actually think that there are lessons in there that should be done with every single teenager in the world to help them to be able to navigate social situations effectively. Same thing with the cognition curriculum. Absolutely amazing for all of our kids. There are lessons for kids very young and very affected with autism starting out that build to lessons that are complex, that we have had professional people, both on the spectrum and not on the spectrum, want to have the benefit of these lessons because they are so useful to a more productive life. And then, of course, there is the pièce de résistance, as they say, the executive functions curriculum, which is where you put it all together. I get so excited when we talk about executive functions because, you know, those I was saying earlier that I got to spend an hour a day for about a 6-month period with Dr. Najdowski and pick her brain and have her explain things to me. And oh my gosh, it was just an amazing, amazing time in my life. But when we started talking about the executive functions, it was sort of the last bastion. I saved it to the very end because I went, I don't get it, right? I'd read through the review of it and I said, you know, and it was the area where my son was really getting most of his lessons from, and I wasn't getting that either. So I wasn't seeing the big picture. And I, you know, toured the building, and actually the week that I started working on executive functions was a week when Dr. Najdowski was on vacation. And so I went to other people's offices, which was wonderful, started relationships with them, and they're some of the people that come in and talk on the show, like, for instance, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who will be with us tomorrow, by the way. And I said, all right, explain executive functions. So I got to hear it from a bunch of different people. But when Dr. Najdowski came back, and I had a little bit more of an understanding, and I was saying, okay, so here's what I understand about it. And she said, okay, but here's the deal with executive functions. This is when we put it all together. And that whatever it is that we want to do, and we've learned all these other skills, this is where we tie them all up into the same bow so that we can achieve whatever goal we want. And if you think about it, the amount that we use our executive functions effectively on a daily basis determines how happy and successful we are. And the example that she gave me was, you know, she actually, and it comes back to me, she hadn't been on vacation, she'd been away at a conference, speaking at a conference, and she was talking about what it took for all the people to get to the conference, how they had to plan, how they had to, you know, decide what they were going to give attention to and what they weren't going to give attention to. They had to problem solve along the way because there were things that they had decided to do to get to the conference, and there were obstacles to overcome. They had to demonstrate flexibility, they had to use their memory, and they had to use metacognition. They had to be thinking about, what do I need to be thinking about in order to get this goal achieved? And then all those things together are executive functions. Great. And so that was wonderful. I was like, wow, this is the most incredible business coach kind of thing in the world. But still, I was thinking of it more for my child. Then I was in a conversation with Dr. Najdowski and some other people one morning, and somebody was talking about how they had taken their child to school that morning, and they said, you know, I see the same woman every single day, running up to the school, and not because she's jogging, but because she's late. Running up to the school with a child in, a smaller child in a stroller with an older child sitting there, and running up, just sweat, panicked every single morning. And they were saying, I just feel so bad for her, because has it not occurred to her that she could change something and that wouldn't have to be that way in the morning? And I tell you, it was like a bunch of bricks hitting me in the head, because I just had that conversation with Dr. Najdowski, and I went, I do the same thing. There are some things that I'm constantly having an issue with in terms of getting ready or being on time or getting this together, getting my child in the car, and I haven't stopped to look at this from an ABC behavior point of view. What's the moment before? What's the behavior? What's the consequence? What can I change? What can I not change? Is there something I could do to the antecedent before that would make this moment easier on myself? And it was this total aha moment for me. And I know you might think, Shannon, really, seriously? But you get so busy day to day, caught up, and sometimes we don't stop to think and go, all right, what isn't working here? How can I think of this differently? It's all executive functions, and not just being thrown through the wind tunnel of our lives, but looking and saying, what do I want to accomplish here? What's preventing that? What can I do about that? All week long, we've said that our topic is problem solving, right? Well, here are the different domains within the curriculum of executive functions, and I got to tell you, this is a great thing for your child, but while you're there, look at the lessons for yourself, because I guarantee you, if you're having a problem with something in your day or your week, and we all do, right? If we look at it through this filter, we start to see what we can do to change it for ourselves. I really think this curriculum is brilliant. And I've said before, the other curriculum's great for any teenage kid. I think this curriculum is great for all of us adults too. But to give the gift of thinking in this way to our kids on the spectrum, it's powerful. It's really, really powerful. I want to talk, though, today a little bit about memory, because this is a category that we don't talk about as much, but it's really important, and I almost wish I'd thought about it before. In the documentary Recovered, there's a moment where the little girl, Jana, she's sitting there with a therapist, and it's this amazing moment where the therapist is saying to her, and by the way, the therapist is Vince Redmond, who we have in the studio on a regular basis, and he's telling her the story of this bunny. And he says, okay, there's this bunny, and the bunny's name is Scott. And he goes down to the farm, and he likes to get vegetables. And he gets carrots, and he gets onions, and he gets whatever. And Jana is sitting there, and she's listening. And she's probably 4 at this point. And you see, she's listening. And she's trying to focus, trying so hard to focus. And then, so he tells her, and it's like a 2-minute story. And he says, okay, what's the name of the bunny? And she says, the bunny. The bunny. And you just see her trying so hard to marshal everything that is within her, and she was listening, but she can't remember the bunny's name, cannot remember for the life of her. And so he finally says to her, he says, Jana, the bunny's name is Scott. Scott! Yes, the bunny's name is Scott. And then he goes over the story with her again, and he says, Jana, what's the name of the bunny? Oh. And you see the anxiety that comes up in this little girl. I remember the first time I watched it, it was just absolutely tragic, because it reminded me of a friend's family member who had Alzheimer's, who was trying to remember something that they knew they were supposed to know, that had just been said to them, and they could not remember it. Well, thank goodness our kids don't have Alzheimer's. Thank goodness this is reversible. But memory is a big part of everybody's day, right? And there are many things that we take into consideration when we're working on memory. I mean, you know, there's spatial memory, remembering where things are in space. You know, some of our kids run into the same piece of furniture every single day because their spatial memory memory isn't great. We can work on that. There are lessons and skills to help them to strengthen, to understand. Other people have a hard time remembering where they put things down. Guilty as charged. Well, there are techniques that you learn in the executive functions curriculum. There are lessons to be learned to help you that are in the meta memory section so that you find a place for the keys to go so that you know where they are. But they also help kids to work through retracing your steps and going through all the behaviors that you went through so that you can find your keys or find your phone or find your Buzz Lightyear toy, right? All these really wonderful things, and there are some great games in there too. Things like memory, you know, the old-fashioned memory that now comes in all different kinds of Nickelodeon characters. There is SpongeBob memory, because why? Because it's more reinforcing for a child than looking at generic pictures if they happen to like SpongeBob. So we can work to strengthen memory, and when we do, what an amazing effect that it has, because it's going to help with all kinds of things for a child to be able to remember what they've learned, to be able to remember rules, to remember behavior, to remember that it gets reinforced when they are compliant. So memory, just one portion, and there are subcategories for memory, as we've already discussed, but just one portion of that all-important executive functions. Because we see, for instance, you know, people who are very high functioning, not on the spectrum, that they're able to do a whole bunch of things, but they keep forgetting to get one thing done, right? And that they have no skills to problem solve about what do I do when I keep forgetting to do that thing. And so they keep not meeting their goals. We don't want that for our children. So we don't have to have that because we have these wonderful lessons, again, available in the skills program. We're going to take a break and come back with today's myth of the day, so stick with us.
ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, was founded in 2004 by several passionate parents who believe that access to early, effective treatment is vital for individuals with autism. Together with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pache, the world's leading provider of therapy for autism, this group created ACT Today to do just as the name implies, take action immediately to treat autism spectrum disorders.
A lot of families and parents and even physicians don't yet accept the fact that we are recovering children with autism.
In 2006, inspired by her struggle to get treatment for her young son Wyatt, television producer and author Nancy Alspaugh Jackson and her husband Reed hosted a backyard benefit for the foundation called Denim and Diamonds for Autism. Tens of thousands of dollars were raised, and in 2008, Alspaugh Jackson took the helm of ACT Today as executive director.
This country has to come together to save a generation of children.
With a dedicated board of directors, a small but committed staff called the A-Team, as in autism, ACT Today is making a huge difference in the lives of children across the country. Grants that fund programs for behavior therapy, special needs schools, and summer camps. Medical needs like diagnostic tests and special diets. Basic safety equipment such as helmets for children who repetitively bang their heads, and fencing for those who wander. Assisted technologies and assistance dogs.
Hi, my name is Max, and I love my iPad too. It's so great. I can take photos.
In 2010, ACT for Military Families became the first national campaign to benefit military children with autism.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings.
ACT Today continues to educate and raise national awareness on the need for early and intensive intervention for an epidemic that affects at least 1 in 110 children.
I called on November 1st. And I'm like, how am I going to get notified? How are you going to let me know? And they ended up looking and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above.
ACT Today, fulfilling its mission of helping families with autism, one child at a time.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we like to do a myth of the day every once in a while, not necessarily every day, but when we can, because there's so much misinformation, and of course we've seen that even more this week. We had the opportunity to talk about the Joe Scarborough statements that he made about autism earlier this week, and of course he was asked to make an apology, and the apology that he made in writing, which was kind of a non-apology, saying, I'm sorry if people took it wrong. I'm sorry, I don't know how we could have taken it any other way than how it was delivered. It really brings home how many myths are out there. And we had the opportunity to talk about that yesterday with Holly Robinson Peete when she was here. We talked to her both about the 50 Cent controversy and the Joe Scarborough controversy. And it seems like it's never ending, right? But like everything else we do, we got to take it a little bit at a time and make sure that we understand and that we are up to date. So much has changed about autism in the last couple of years. I remember when my son was diagnosed and the doctor saying to me, be grateful that you live in the time that you do, because in the last 5 years, what we've learned about autism is more than in the last 50 years combined. And I remember thinking, wow, that's really amazing. And when I think about how different the world is now from when my son was diagnosed and what we know now, it's really amazing. And then on top of that, the fact how much has changed in the last 2 years. I have hope. There are times when people say things like Monday when Joe Scarborough said that, and I thought, my goodness, are we ever going to get there? Are we ever going to get there if people are going to say comments like this? But you know what? 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We are making progress. And I think it's important to keep our eye on the progress. And in the midst of all the things that we were talking about with Holly Robinson Peete yesterday, somebody wrote in and said, yeah, but we can't all afford ABA. And in that moment in time, and I kind of addressed it to Holly, I love to quote her here because in her blog a little over a year ago, she wrote a blog about the 8 things I wish everybody knew about autism. And the first thing was how expensive it is, and that no one can afford it. And that, I always like to say, boy, if Holly Robinson Peete says that nobody can afford it, then we can all forgive ourselves because we can't afford it. And that seems embarrassing on some days, right? But we shouldn't be embarrassed about it. Nobody can afford it. But somebody wrote in yesterday and said, yeah, but a lot of people can't afford ABA. Here's what I want to say to you. That's a myth. That is a myth. And I know it feels that way, and I'm not trying to be judgmental because I don't know what your circumstances are. But here's the thing. There are lots of people who have gotten ABA that did not have to pay for it. And there are different ways to do that. And I'm not saying that you haven't done a whole lot of work, because you probably have worked yourself to the bone with worry and with trying to get things done and filling out the paperwork. But I want to tell you that sometimes there are more efficient ways of doing things than there are other ways. And I am guilty of this all the time. I, think I got to do something and that it's going to take a whole lot of work and it's going to take a whole lot of energy. And I see somebody else who did it with a press of a button and I go, what? What? How can it be that simple? And I'm not trying to make it sound like it is simple. There's nothing simple about this. But there are ways for you to be able to obtain ABA therapy, even if it is just that you train yourself. We talked earlier about CARD learning and skills, and I've mentioned there are grant phase right now so that you can get a grant for CARD learning and for skills. And if you don't have ABA and don't have an ABA provider, I'm just going to beg you, please fill out the grant today. You only have a couple of days left before they're not in a grant phase anymore. I want to bring up an example. We showed the video earlier of Maddie. Maddie's family, Maddie was diagnosed with autism and they were not near an ABA provider, did not have insurance reform, did not know what they were going to do. And this mom and this dad said, we're going to figure it out for ourselves. We know that ABA is effective. We're going to figure it out. And they started studying and didn't have tools that were already made for them, but they were creating a curriculum. It was exhaustive. They went and got volunteers from their church and they began to try to train them. It seemed like it was overwhelming, but you know what? they were going to do it anyway. But what happened was that Dr. Jonathan Tarbox was in their area talking about autism. They went to see Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and he said, hey, we've got this new thing, CARDI learning, and this new thing, skills, and we want people to test it out. Would you like to try this? And this family said, yes, we want to try this. And so they did, and used CARDI learning to train their staff. They used skills to make their curriculum, to decide what they were going to teach this child, and this child made tremendous, tremendous progress. Again, you can get a grant for CARDI learning and skills, apply to Autism Care and Treatment today, and you can apply for that grant. So when I hear people say, well, but not everybody can have ABA, not everybody can afford it, I want to remind you that that was true 2 years ago. That was absolutely the truth. But let's read the new headlines. That is not the case. That is not the case. And if you are one of those people and you say, I really, really want to do this, but I can't afford it and I don't have a provider, please fill out the application for the grant. I only have 3 more days in which I can say that to you and have that be the case. So act now. Fill out the paperwork. It is extensive. I know you have other things to do, but let's prioritize. If you are somebody who lives near an ABA provider, there are other opportunities for you as well. Perhaps there is insurance, and we talk about this all the time, that you got to ask the right questions of the right people. Go to your local support group. Go to that ABA provider that's local and say, how can I afford you? Ask the question. They're going to be able to tell you how other people do it. Most good ABA providers have gotten really adept at knowing how and when and where people get funding. So ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask, because there are answers that are available to you. And most importantly, do not give up. Do not allow yourself to, we're talking about problem solving this week. Well, here is, you know that's your goal. I hope you know that's your goal, because we know it's effective. We want that progress for you and for your child. So you're not going to give up. We're not going to give up. And you know what? I've said this before. I'll say it again. Write in and tell us what your obstacle is. I want to help you to figure it out, because I believe that this is true, that we can get ABA for every child one way or another. And I want to work with you on it. That's the world I want to live in. I want to believe that that is the case. If you can prove to me that it's not the case, well, then I'll say that. But until we can prove that that's not the case, I believe that there's a way that we can get ABA for you, even if it's that you become really good and educate yourself. Dr. Najdowski said that we've got people all around the world who are doing that and seeing progress with their child. You can do this. You can do this. I've seen many other people who could do it who thought that they couldn't, and they did. And it makes a difference for our kids, for your child. So don't believe people when they tell you that's old information. It was true 2 years ago. It absolutely was true. You're not wrong. That was the case. It's not the case anymore. And that's a wonderful thing. That's a fabulous thing. Okay, so stick with us. It's that time of the day when this show is going to end, but the conversation continues throughout the day, throughout the night. There are lots of ways for you to get a hold of us so that you can be a part of the conversation. Emily is going to start to cycle through some of those on your screen. One of them is through email. You can email us. You can phone us. You can Skype us. You can Facebook with us. You can tweet. You can be watching us on so many different servers. You can be watching us on autism-live.com, but you can also be watching us on blip.tv. You can be watching us on our very own YouTube channel. You can download us for free on iTunes, and you can be watching us on Ustream. All of these different ways are available to you for free, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. By the end of today, we are going to have up all the different segments that we did with Holly Robinson Pete, including after the show ended yesterday. She was so gracious, because there were questions that we didn't get to, that we were able to keep her for a period of time here in the studio. We continued filming, and it was not aired, has not aired yet, and we will have that up on the YouTube channel and on Blip and on iTunes later on today, so you guys can watch those clips that were not shown. maybe your question was answered in that period of time. Also want to remind you that tomorrow at 11 o'clock, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox is going to be with us in the studio. We're going to talk about research, but I'm also going to ask him to take on and clarify for us once and for all, because he is an autism expert, about what the DSM-4 says and why what Joe Scarborough said was complete and total ignorance. So we're going to take that on. I don't mean to laugh, but I don't know what else to do because it's so unbelievably ignorant. We're going to take that on tomorrow at 11 o'clock. You're not going to want to miss that, because I'm sure that my blood pressure is going to go up and the top of my head's going to come off and fly around the room. I just can't even believe he said that. I know there are a lot of you who are out there who are shocked about that, but Dr. Jonathan Tarbox tomorrow, and of course we're going to talk about other things too, because we look at what the myth is and we got to move on to what the solutions are. And Dr. Tarbox is aware of the latest research, and so he's always got up to the minute information for us. I hope that you will take the time to think about, what do you want out of this? What information do you need to be the most effective, most efficient person on your child's team? Please write to us or call us or Facebook us or tweet us and let us know, because that's the information that we want to provide to you and for you. So I had a wonderful time with you here today. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. with more here on Autism Live. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.